It is really restricted in terms of the number of people, and we have some check-in procedures. But we also have a remote audience, and some of our presenters are going to be remote. Some of them are going to be live and in person here at our facility. It's a first time for us to do this, so there's a lot of technical challenges to get it to work. Hopefully it will work well. For those of you who are remote, we look forward to seeing you sometime in the future at MassRobotics. But for those of you who can make it in person, we appreciate you coming. Let's get started. Actually, I'm going to wait for Joyce to let me know when we can get started. How are we doing on the, as people join in? So we have a little tally thing in the back that tells us people are joining in. So we're just kind of watching that and seeing when that plateaus out, and we'll get started. Okay. So we tried the mic here, and then it was conflicting with the mic on the webinar. So we're not doing the mic for this room. So if I'm not loud enough, or if any of the speakers are not loud enough in the room, let me know. I know we have you spread out, so hopefully this will work. All right. So first, welcome to our second annual Robotics and Defense event. My name's Tom Ryden. I'm the Executive Director of MassRobotics. So MassRobotics, for those of you who don't know, we're an independent nonprofit. Our mission is to support the robotics community, both here locally and throughout the world, and encourage the development and growth of robotics. We bring together startups in our facility here, and we are really excited to show them the opportunity, or have them meet some of the folks that are driving some of the requirements for robotics. Especially today, we're focused on the DoD, and we think it's really important for startups to hear and learn about the different opportunities that the DoD offers in engaging with startups. So we're excited to offer this event. The second half of the event, we're going to be switching over to having some of the startups provide demos of their technology and talk about their technology. So we're going to go for about half the event, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to go for the other half. So this is just one of our signature series of robots in, as we call them. We have a robots in manufacturing coming up in October. We have a robots in construction that will be in November. So if you're interested in any of those, please just go to our website. You can find more information about that. I'd like to thank MITRE for sponsoring this event. So MITRE is really involved with MassRobotics. They've been a great supporter since early on. They're also engaged. They have a presence here. They work very closely with the startups, and they do a great job of kind of helping the startups understand the kind of the landscape, especially around the DoD. And I'm very pleased to have Marissa McCoy here today to talk a little bit more about MITRE's work in this area, and also what they've seen in terms of the different organizations and what they're doing in defense. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it off. Just one thing on logistics side. So for those of you who are remote, we're going to be showing some videos throughout the series. It's probably best to close your other applications. Sometimes the videos come up behind. So if you close out other applications, hopefully you'll see that video. If not, just go hunting around. Usually the videos do show up. And I think that's it for the folks who are here. Please don't park out front if anybody has parked out front, because there's a 2-hour limit and they stick to that. I think that's it. Marissa.
All right, great, thanks, Tom. I'm Marissa McCoy. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Cyber Operations Division at MITRE, and I'm also part of our Bridging Innovation team. So I'm excited to hear from the presenting organizations today, and I'm going to provide an overview of the Department of Defense innovation ecosystem. So those opportunities to plug in and those key people that you really want to reach out to in order to engage with the ecosystem. Next slide. Right. First, I want to give a brief overview of who MITRE is. MITRE is a not-for-profit organization. We operate federally funded research and development centers, and we work across the whole of government. So we work in a number of technical and domain areas, including AI and machine learning, autonomous systems, human-robot interaction. We sit on the government side of the table, and so we act as that trusted advisor to the government to help them get innovative technologies out to the warfighter. Next slide. And one of MITRE's, one of our corporate initiatives is Bridging Innovation. And the idea here is that we create these pathways to engage with non-traditional companies and also build partnerships externally, like with MassRobotics. And so we focus on a couple of key activities. The first of which is working with our sponsors to shape and scope and prioritize their most pressing challenges that we can then share out with industry. We also immerse in regional innovation centers so that we can sit side by side with innovators, learn from them, and also collaborate. And because we have a sense of government challenges and we're also plugged into the innovation community, we can really scout and match and identify those capabilities that we can use and plug into our government sponsor challenges. Then we evaluate them, and we can incubate them by providing technical and domain expertise and leveraging our lab capabilities out at our Bedford campus. And all of this would be for nothing if it wasn't to transition these capabilities out to the warfighter. So we work with Acquisition the Digital Age, which is a group at MITRE, so that we understand which pathways can get those capabilities out to the warfighter most quickly. Next slide. So MITRE's been engaged in the innovation ecosystem for a number of years now, and it's been really exciting to see over the past few years the stand-up of a lot of new organizations and a lot of new opportunities for startups. And so it's a really exciting time for startups to start to engage with the DoD community, but it can also be maybe a little bit overwhelming, understanding who the players are, what they do, and then kind of figuring out what the differentiators are so you know where to plug in. And so MITRE's been asked to provide what's a resource to startups to help them navigate that ecosystem, to see which opportunities make the most sense for them to plug into so they can really get their capabilities transitioned. Next slide. And so originally we were thinking of creating something like this, a one-page overview of where all these organizations kind of fit. And then we decided maybe that wasn't the best route. Maybe that's what we weren't being asked to do. For a couple of reasons. One, this has already clearly been produced, and it's a resource out in the community if you want to access it. But two, we know that startups don't want to be, they don't want to have to know everything about the DoD. They're asking some key questions, and so we really wanted to get at what those key questions are and how we can provide a resource so it makes it easier for them to find those opportunities. Next slide. And really what startups are wanting to know is who are the DoD innovation organizations, what do they do, what are the technology maturity levels of they're seeking, and what are the capabilities that they're seeking, where's the funding, and ultimately how do they get access to the funding. Next slide. So our first step in this was kind of taking a first stab at what are those entry points, who are those key innovation organizations that startups should really be trying to tap. And so these are organizations from the Office of the Secretary of Defense, across the services, and even outside of the DoD. So these are the organizations that are actively seeking to do business with non-traditional companies and organizations that are actively seeking to lower the barrier of entry for startups. And so this is kind of our starting point. We know that there are a lot of organizations out there and they're continuing to grow. And so we keep this list updated, but this is our first attempt at identifying those companies, organizations. Next slide. So we know who the organizations are. And so now we really wanted to see, well, what do those organizations do? So we created these 6 characterizations where we can kind of bucket the organizations into these characterizations to help startups understand what the organization actually does and if it's a viable opportunity for them. So the first one is Accelerator. So these are the programs that provide structured programs that provide seed funding and mentorship to startups. There are also challenges that are really looking at what are those capabilities that we can give based on cash-based incentives to these companies. Connectors are those organizations who have a lot of connections in DoD, academia, industry, and the VC community, and they can provide those introductions to startups. Funding opportunities are those organizations that invest in the companies and want to see them grow in that kind of way. government contracting authority means that the organization has the authority to execute a government contract or agreement. And then there are incubators, those organizations that may provide seed funding, but usually do provide a physical lab space to help grow and incubate those companies. Next slide. So now that we have an understanding of who the organizations are and really what they do, we wanted to take it a step further and help startups understand, what is the best or most viable opportunity for me? So a lot of these organizations focus on technology readiness levels. And so we created this kind of interactive visualization so that startups can use the slider on the far left to indicate what their TRL is, which will then kind of filter out which organizations are the best for them to pursue. Next slide. So if you're at a TRL 2 to 3, then you can take a look at the left-hand side and see those organizations who you should really focus on. So you don't have to look across the whole DoD innovation ecosystem. You can really hone in on these key organizations and pursue those. Next slide. The same is true if you're a TRL 5 to 7. So your list of organizations is a little bit longer. So you have the opportunity to see what those organizations are and what they do. And based on the goals of your company, you can identify really the most viable path for your company at the current point of its capability development. All right, next slide. And so kind of pulling all this together, the acquisition in the digital age team, ADA, they've essentially created a one-stop shop for startups. So you have the whole kind of ecosystem laid out here. You can see up top are the list of the DoD organizations. If you go to the next slide, you can see that we have the characterizations laid out and kind of the organizations binned underneath those characterizations. So you really have a snapshot of what the opportunities are in the space. So let's say that you want to also do a deeper dive. Let's say that you've heard a lot of great things about DIU. And so you click on DIU there. It goes to the next slide. Then there is a page further down that gives an overview of DIU. So in this snapshot, you have an understanding of who DIU is. On the right side, the handshake indicates they have government contracting authority. Then you can understand under highlights, how long does it take to get on contract? How long are those contracts typically? What are the technology areas and how do you engage? And so ADA has pulled together a description like this for each of the organizations that have been laid out so that startups have a better sense of not only what does the ecosystem look like, but what are the best points of engagement for them at any point in time of their capability development. All right, next slide. And so I encourage folks to check out our links here, both the TRL visualization, but also the ecosystem link. Check it out, see how it can help you identify opportunities in the space. Let us know if you're a startup, if there are any other key bits of information that you would also include on our site. We're always looking to keep this updated, and as the ecosystem continues to evolve and grow, then we keep that updated. But the real takeaway is the government wants to do business with small businesses. And so anything we can do to kind of streamline the processes and make it easier, we're happy to do. So please reach out and we'll be happy to talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa. Appreciate that. So in one of Marissa's slides, you saw a number of different organizations, innovation groups within the DoD, and I'm excited to have a number of them here, either remotely or in person, to be able to present today and give you a little bit more flavor, a little bit more detail about what they're doing, what their organization is doing, and how they engage with startups. I do want to say a thing about Q&A. So we have a really packed schedule. We will take questions. If you're remote, there is a tab on the right-hand side of your screen. If you click on that, you'll get down. There's another tab to touch for Q&A. Just type in your question there. If we have time, we'll get to it. If not, we will make sure that we route the question to the appropriate presenter and try to collect those responses and get them back out to people. So we have a number of organizations that are each going to have about 5 minutes to present. So I know that's not a lot of time, but hopefully, as I said, it'll give you a flavor about them and what they're doing. First up, we have Steve Borodano from Naval X Tech Bridges, the Northeast Tech Bridge. And so Steve is here in person, so we're great to have him. Steve.
Hi, so I'm Steve Borodano. So if you're in the Boston area, I think you've seen a lot of the improvements to industry outreach that the Army and the Air Force have done. So the Navy's trying to do that as well, and part of that effort is through Naval X and what we call the tech bridges. Next slide, please. So we really want to improve connection to industry, connection to academia, even connection within the Navy. And one of the ways we're doing that is through a thing called the tech bridge. So I work at the Naval Undersea Warfare Center down in Newport. There's about 6,000 civilian and contractors working undersea technology. But if you came to visit me, you'd see a gate, a gun, and a guard. Not a very welcoming environment. So part of the strategy is having off-site facilities where you can work with the Navy. And part of that is also being not a Navy-centric. So we want to have other organizations in there. Sometimes it's a Navy project, sometimes dual use, and sometimes it's a project that doesn't have anything to do with the Navy, but it's a place where you can get together. We have 12 locations right now, 12 tech bridges. That number will continue to grow. Each one will have a technology focus and a regional focus. So if you're lucky and your region and technology lines up, it's pretty straightforward. Otherwise, we'll partner with other tech bridges to get things going. Next slide. So locally in the Northeast, we're centered in Rhode Island and working with the Naval Undersea Warfare Center and our local manufacturing extension partnership. And I'd say about 10 to 15% of the funding of this is coming from the Navy. A lot of it is state funding and federal funding. So there's a lot of players in this, and that really will speak to its long-term viability, that it's not relying just on the Navy. Next slide. So we talk about the physical site. There's really two strategies. You have the physical infrastructure and the virtual infrastructure. On the physical side, we're going to be building this. It's built. We are going to have a 17 square foot facility in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, right near Newport. We have a location set aside in URI. And then when companies aren't coming to us, we can go to them at like CIC, Innovate Newport, and other places. We also want to have in-water testing support. And if you go to the next slide, I just want to touch on this a little bit more deeply. If there's any company out there that wants to test their stuff in water, this is a good place to do it because we have water space management. We have all the support you need to do in-water testing. And we've really improved what we call the 3 A's, the affordability, the accessibility, and the availability of this facility. So it's much easier to test with us than it was years ago. So I know Kraken and a couple other undersea tech companies are represented. So reach out if you need to do some testing. And then my last slide here is just the virtual support. So we want to be able to support companies no matter what size they are, what stage they are. So in this, building this up, so if you're a really small company doing acceleration, we're partnering with Mass Challenge RI. We have a thing called Prize Challenge Authority now, so we can do challenges that are a little easier or a lot easier to work with a small company than a traditional contract. We have broad agency announcements for S&T, and we've really structured those to have a really light lift to propose. We have programs in place to help with STTR and SBIRs by partnering with the local universities and industry. One of the great things is we've convinced 6 primes in our region to work together as a coalition to help small businesses. And then there's a thing called OTAs, other transactional authority for prototyping contracts. And we work with Undersea Technology Consortium to support those type of programs. So kind of the whole life cycle of early stage. Once you get beyond this, you're into more traditional contracting, and you're kind of off our books. Thank you very much.
So thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. Next up, we have Will Dixon from FedTech, and I believe Will is remote. Yeah. So Will, take it away. Our first technical challenge.
Oh, there we go. Great. Tom, can you hear me? Anyone, can you hear me? Positive feedback here?
All right, that'll work.
Okay, cool. Great.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. Nice to see everybody today, but by that I mean you can see me and I can't see anybody else. But I work for FedTech. We are a private organization here. We call ourselves a venture builder at the intersection of tough tech, deep tech, entrepreneurship, and the mission-driven organizations like the federal government and the DoD. Sorry, take that headphone out. Get some feedback. Next slide, please. So at FedTech, we kind of have four major programs. And the final slide has kind of action items for different types of people who should be involved in these programs. But the primary one, which I'm most excited about, is our startup studios. So if you're an aspiring entrepreneur out there and want to start a company but don't necessarily have an idea or a breakthrough technology to build around, we work with 40 plus federal labs around the United States, including folks like NASA, MITRE, NIST, as well as all the Department of Defense and Department of Energy labs. So our startup studios are a program we run to empower entrepreneurs to launch companies with early stage technology breakthroughs, and again, licensing some really great technology that's been already de-risked by the federal government. Our custom accelerators, you're going to hear from the prize competition we support primarily through this next tech search in a minute from Zeke from the Army. But our custom accelerators are opportunities for small businesses who are pursuing some of those same missions that the federal government is primarily where we operate is in the energy technologies and defense technology space. Opportunities for small businesses. Again, small business, you can be a startup with as little or as much traction as possible. But custom accelerators, again, designed, a little bit different than the normal accelerators, where you can actually learn what it takes, kind of like what MITRE was sharing, but some hands-on coaching, guidance, mentorship to really engage the DoD as a customer and partner. The last two things I'll kind of skip over here because maybe not super applicable to the audience, but internal innovation. So if you're a large organization out there, we work with lots of federal technical orgs here, but applying the lessons from entrepreneurship to large organizations, and then corporate ventures where we can connect all of the startups and small businesses we work with to appropriate corporate partners and really translating some of that breakthrough technology into business impact and partnership opportunities. Next slide. So just a quick selection here of some of the groups that we worked with. Like I said, we've worked with a ton of the federal organizations, almost all of the ones on this call. And we, again, are right at the intersection of those federal organizations and entrepreneurship in the space of deep tech, tough tech. A cool few anecdotes from the Startup Studio. You see the NFL on here. If you wanted to be an entrepreneur in the Startup Studio, you could be anybody. It could be anyone in this audience. And we've actually had retired NFL and NBA players join our programs and start businesses around some of the breakthrough technologies. There's actually one of our alumni who's led by an ex-NFL player that started a company from a NASA tech, and they're actively raising a venture fund right now. So fun little fact there. But again, we really work with almost all of the federal government, primarily in the DoD and DOE. Next slide. A few things, again, that if you get a little bit more into the nitty gritty, but happy to talk with anyone after this. What we bring to the table in working with us to really get to the federal government and pursue some of those mission-driven impacts for technology, we have some proven successes, again, in accelerating startups in partnership with these tech centers. We bring a diverse national mentor pool. Even before COVID, all of our FedTech program was open to any startup or entrepreneur across the nation with minimal in-person engagement. And so we've built a national diverse mentor pool from all different corners of venture capital, the DoD ecosystem, startup entrepreneurs, and even large industry and academia as well. Empathy for technical founders embarking upon a business. Again, everything we do is only for those deep tech, hard tech, tough tech startups, whatever you want to call it. We don't work with any consumer or kind of app-based technologies, only the deep research-based tech. And then fundraising success. And again, we are fundraising agnostic. So those programs I mentioned, because we partner with the government organizations like the Army, like the Department of Energy, we actually take no equity and have no incentive to get you as a startup to a financial exit. And so we're purely driven by helping you succeed, whether that's venture capital investment, whether it's federal grants, which are plentiful for deep tech startups, or any other funding or partnership opportunity. Next slide. So get involved here. A few kind of action items depending on who you might be here. So entrepreneur, especially aspiring entrepreneur. And the reason I think it's important for this group here is, say you were starting a business, didn't go well, you want to take another stab in it. You are the best qualified to join one of our studio programs to really take a technology to market from one of the federal labs. Startup, you would apply to one of our partners. So that'd be X-Tech Search of the Innovation Crossroads program at Oak Ridge National Lab. And and that is a current call that is open right now. If you are an energy related breakthrough technology, you can go to Oak Ridge National Lab Innovation Crossroads, just Google that, and you can apply online there. The applications are currently open. Mentorship, lots of different opportunities for mentorship, and always continue to grow our ecosystem here. And anything else, let me know. At FedTech, we're a startup here, and we eat our own dog food of stakeholder discovery and customer discovery. So if anyone's out there and wants to get to know us more or has ways that we can help you, please don't hesitate to ask. Thanks for the time here from MassRobotics and MITRE.
Unmuted.
Great, thank you, Will. As Will mentioned, X-Tech Search is our actually next talk. So Zeke Topolsky will talk about X-Tech.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, thank you very much. And it was I'm Steve, brings back memories. I grew up in Boston area, so it's good to hear the accent. And from Will and the introduction to the X-Tech Search program, we work closely with FedTech on our accelerator. So I'll talk about that quickly. This is Army's prize competition program, if you will. It started out as a single open topic prize competition. We learned a lot from our friends at AFWorks and others and realized the value in having an open topic where industry partners can propose solutions for the Army, not necessarily just responding to our solicited topics that we have in our SBIR and other traditional offerings. So that started 2 years ago. It's now grown into more of a program that manages all the different ways the Army uses prize authority in prize competitions, which is a great opportunity to build partnerships with industry, startups, small businesses, and the like. So next slide, please. X-Tech Search, it started in June 2018. This was an initiative by the Assistant Secretary for the Army for Acquisition, Logistics, and Technology, we call ASALT. So the Assistant Secretary, he wanted to have an opportunity for small businesses to find a friendly front door to the Army. How can we first socialize our ideas with the Army? Dr. Bruce Jetty, the ASALT, had retired from service over 30 years in the military and started his own small business and found it very difficult to break back into the Pentagon, break back into the offices that he used to work and run. So now, as his appointment as ASALT, he's looked at launching this initiative to make it easier for small businesses and startups to socialize their ideas with the Army, with the right folks in the Army, to get technical feedback and operational feedback on their ideas, and then eventually create pipelines and funnel them, vector them, if you will, like the chart that MITRE showed, to the right funding opportunities or partnership opportunities to take that technology forward. This is executed in accordance with the America Competes Act, which is a prize authority given to all federal labs. But we've also run prize competitions under other authorities given to us in the DoD as well, which I could talk about. The X-Tech Search contest we run twice a year. Unfortunately, we don't have one open now, but we anticipate opening our next round, the 6th contest of this, as soon as the defense appropriation is passed. And so look at our website, xtechsearch.army.mil for that. I would imagine sometime after the January timeframe will be our next open call. It's a $2 million prize competition. It's quite large. It lasts a whole 12-month period, a whole year, with 4 stages of down selection. And the purpose of that really is to make sure we vet the technology correctly within the Army, but also to afford networking and exposure opportunities, culminating in a 6-month accelerator program operated by FedTech for the finalists in this competition. It's very easy to enter. We just ask for a 2-page white paper. Some of our contests, it's a single slide summary. And then, those will get invitations to a pitch day, if you will, to do an oral presentation, replacing the traditional long written proposals that we typically require. Next slide, please. So this program's grown. We sort of have 3 main buckets of contests now that we operate. One is the open topic I mentioned that's run twice a year. And that's where we let all of the industry partners propose their solutions, and we provide the experts to give feedback on where they could fit within the Army, what are the use cases, and which offices you should be talking to. The other types of competitions are customer focused or customer sponsored, where they have a specific challenge they're trying to solve, and we need small business and startup help with that. So we have, we'll support competitions that have that very specific use case. All of these could be found, again, on our website, xtechsearch.army.mil. And then lastly, we've developed some pilots. One is open right now, where we're piloting the combination of a prize authority with the SBIR contract mechanism. So winners from a prize competition can go right into an SBIR contract award to try to promote, faster pipelines into these contract processes, especially the SBIR program. Right now, we have an open pilot for that. With the very end of the FY20 cycle. It's called X-Tech SBIR, and it has 6 topics, several of which are very relevant to this group, related to robotic combat vehicles, predictive maintenance, autonomy, and navigation. And you should definitely check out that topic. It's open now through October 9th, accepting proposals. We make sure that we engage the entire Army. So every proposal we read, we don't just have the person whose research area is review that proposal. We make sure that representatives from the user community, as well as the S&T or research community and the acquisition community, all weigh in on that, because it takes that whole community to ensure successful transitions within the Army. And lastly, we have the accelerator program that Will mentioned. That's really where we put our arms around the companies that have been vetted and really try to help bring their companies forward to make them successful, not just with the Army, but also on the commercial side. Because any success from a company that has critical technologies for the Army helps us out, it helps you out, it helps out the economy, but more importantly, it helps bring capabilities quicker to our soldiers. Next slide. The accelerator program, I have this link in here, but really just go to YouTube, X-Tech Search, and there's a whole playlist on our accelerator. They're really short videos. They're excellent to watch. They show you how our program, will take the startups, take the small businesses, and put them through immersion days, put them in direct contact with the right stakeholders to help bring their technology to the next level. Next slide. And I know this is really what you want to get at. And you've heard this already, but for the Army, we post all our prize competitions here, xtechsearch.army.mil. We've kind of fashioned it, as you could see, very much along the lines of how challenge.gov is, so that you don't have to learn a new platform. Challenge.gov is an excellent resource to see all federal prize competitions posted, and not just prize competitions. They'll have grants and other opportunities there as well. And we post all our contests there, as well as all the Army contests consolidated on our website. Next slide. Our website has a resource section, which is really useful. The number one link or click that we get on our website is this first link there in the resources, called the ASALT Industry Opportunities Brochure. This is a 1.5-year old document now that needs updating, but it's an attempt to try to put all the Army funding opportunities and collaboration opportunities into one short 12-page handbook that makes it a little easier to navigate. We're obviously looking to make this web-based. And we definitely loved what I saw in the MITRE presentation. Go visit that as well. It's a complicated ecosystem, trying to figure out where you fit. I think with X-Tech Search, what we're trying to do is offer some personnel, some mentorship, and helping navigate that as you go through the program. And we're obviously going to work hard to try to make that web-based and accessible to everybody as well. With that, do I have another slide? I don't think so. Yeah, please leave that up. That's my contact information, our website, and then we have a generic email box for any questions related to X-Tech Search or Army prize competitions, or just ways to engage with the Army in general. I encourage you to reach out, contact us. Thank you.
Unmuted.
All right. Thanks. Thank you very much, Zeke. And so next we have an in-person presenter. So Steve Taub from In-Q-Tel is up next.
Great. Thanks, Tom, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to tell you about In-Q-Tel. So we are a nonprofit strategic investment firm. So we're a little bit different than maybe some of the other organizations here because we are actually investing equity in companies and not just providing revenue in the form of SBIR funds and things like that. We also, I think, take a little bit of a broader view on what we mean by defense, which I think you'll get into in a minute when we talk about who our customers are. Can you go to the next slide? So In-Q-Tel, as I said, it's an independent nonprofit, and really we exist to connect three worlds. The world of venture capital, where there are over 2,200 venture capital firms that In-Q-Tel has co-invested with over its lifetime of about 20 years. The world of commercially focused startups, and I'll say more about that in a minute, and the world of our government partners. And we try to bring those three groups together to help advance government missions. Next slide. So our investment model is, we have ongoing dialogue with our customer agencies throughout the year. That's both formalized and sort of informal and ad hoc to really understand at a pretty deep level what their technology needs and interests are. And at the same time, we have an investment team of about 20 folks like myself who are out talking to collectively several thousand startup companies every year. And we're looking for where those things intersect. So ultimately, our goal is to get technology adopted by the government. That is actually how we measure ourselves. So we find technology companies that are generally in the focused on commercial markets, not necessarily focused on defense markets, but that have applications for our customers. And we build relationships with those companies to understand the technology and where that technology is going. So there's an aspect of providing situational awareness to our government customers. But primarily what we're doing is we are helping adapt the technologies and products those companies are bringing to the commercial markets and make them usable by the government. And we do that through a combination of revenue funding, essentially NRE work, and equity investment. And we've been very successful at leveraging institutional venture capital money into these companies as well. So we're always working with companies that are backed by institutional venture capital and corporate venture capital. And we estimate that for every dollar that In-Q-Tel puts into a company, those companies are bringing in $18 in private sector investment. So it's been a very efficient model that we developed. Go to the next slide. So we're a stage agnostic investor, although most of the time we're working with companies that are sort of seed to Series B. Companies that are really on the very early side, we find it's just difficult for our customers to actually adopt the technology. So we want to wait until the product is kind of what we call ready soon. And on the later end, there's, again, no limit except that what's attractive to the company. We sometimes find that even very late stage companies are interested in working with us as a way to build a federal business with a helpful partner. As I mentioned, we're always co-investing with institutional venture capital funds, and we're a minority investor, so we're not taking control of companies. We're not taking board seats with companies, although we usually have a board observer. We're flexible in how the equity is structured. We use shares, we use convertible notes, we use warrants, and we do invest outside the U.S. I think about 10% of our portfolio companies are outside of the U.S. And we basically do two kinds of deals. So the bread and butter of In-Q-Tel is what we call a work program. And what we find is that often companies that are developing products for commercial applications have something that somebody in the government that we work with would like to use, but it needs some modification or enhancement. And often that's really just about sort of accelerating things that are already on the company's roadmap and bringing them to the front of the line so that the government can adopt the technology. So in those situations, In-Q-Tel will contract with the company, pay them in cash to do the work, and as part of that deal, we get a small amount of equity in the company. And ultimately, we help the company, once the project is completed, we help the company actually get their technology adopted by the government. And just for some overall metrics, about 70% of those projects are successfully completed. About 70% of those actually do an adoption. So overall, it's about a 50-50 hit rate, which in my experience, doing corporate venture capital for a long time is very good. Those deals are usually between $500,000 and $3 million, just to give you a sense. We also, in some cases, find companies where the timing isn't right for whatever reason to do a work program, but we might want to build a relationship with a company, get closer to it, keep an eye on the technology, and in those circumstances, we'll make just a small pure equity investment, usually $250,000 to $500,000. And I should say, in all cases, we're not valuing companies, we're not leading financings, we're really participating in deals that have been put together by institutional venture funds. Next slide. Some of the focus areas that we've got in robotics. So as I said, we have an ongoing dialogue with our customers. We don't publish a shopping list. Part of that's because the customers don't always want to publicize what they're looking for. Part of that is because it's a really long list. And part of it is because we're also just open to things that are not on the list. Part of our function is really to be kind of peripheral vision for the customer agencies. But we're very active investors in autonomous systems. We are actively looking at companies in manufacturing and logistics where there's a lot of robotics being used. Sensors and navigation and computing hardware, so some of the building blocks of robotic systems, which have applications that our customers are interested in that are not necessarily in robotics, but clearly are benefiting and are closely related. And then also we're a very active investor in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I should say, this is just one area out of a very broad list of subject matter areas that In-Q-Tel is actively pursuing and investing in. And that really kind of reflects the customers that we work with. So, In-Q-Tel started out working with CIA, but today we work with 8 different agencies, depending on how you count. I like to say they all have 3-letter acronyms, but that's about where the commonality ends. So, but we've worked with a number of components of the Department of Defense, a number of intelligence agencies, as well as civilian agencies like the FBI and Department of Homeland Security. So, and even within those agencies, which have very diverse missions, we're working with everybody from the people who are running operations in the field to the analysts behind their desks to the facilities managers and the HR teams. So, very broad appetite. Next slide. No, I guess that's it. So, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Steve. So next up, we have Brian Andrews with Softworks. And I believe Brian is remote. Yep, there you go.
I am remote. Thank you, Tom. You might want to mute on yours. I think I'm getting some feedback. All right, I am broadcasting, Brian Andrews, my name, broadcasting from sunny Tampa, Florida. Welcome, everyone. Happy afternoon. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Softworks today. So next slide. So Softworks was developed under a Title 15 Partnership Intermediary Agreement, or a PIA, with the United States Special Operations Command, or SOCOM. Our parent company is DefenseWorks, which is up in Niceville, Florida. We are a registered not-for-profit in the state of Florida, located out of Tampa, Florida, just outside of headquarters. We're in a very cool, kitschy part of town in Tampa, the old cigar manufacturing area called Ybor City. And we're an open facility, so we do non-classified items. Anyone can walk in. If you're in the Tampa area, I highly recommend you stop by, pay us a visit, go on one of our tours. It'll explain a little bit about what we do. So DefenseWorks and United States Special Ops Command got together and had their baby called Softworks. And we are a platform that's designed to help get after the challenging problems, the warfighter problems that SOCOM has. SOCOM is everything from submarines to satellites. So most likely, if you're working on something, it probably has an application to one of the SOCOM problem sets. So next slide. All right, so how it works. So the way we get problem sets from United States Special Operations Command is a nomination will come in. And it could come in from an end user out there in the field, could go through headquarters, wherever it comes in, they give us a problem set. And we apply one of our many Softworks mechanisms to that problem set. We have a whole ecosystem, about 40,000 folks that help tackle some of these problems. And as part of our mechanisms that we have collaboration exercises, we have assessment events that we do, and we have prize challenges. Sometimes we'll do an internal project, and all of those come through our ecosystem with an opportunity. If you join our ecosystem, you will get an announcement for those business opportunities, roughly about 2 to 3 a month. So you will not get spammed. Every email you get from us is a business opportunity, and we look for submissions. So for those entrepreneurs, citizen scientists, startup community, get your submissions in. What we ask for is usually not onerous. It's usually not much more than a quad chart and maybe a white paper, 3 to 4 pages, just explaining what your technology is. Because our problem sets we get from SOCOM are pretty broad and kind of the tougher problem sets, it usually can't be solved with one company. So what we're good at doing is kind of putting the puzzle together, finding the company that's got a great algorithm, matching them up with someone that's got a good front end that maybe works on a cell phone, and then pairing it off with someone that's got some hardware, a sensor that might kind of tie it all together. So that's one of the good things we do is be able to bring many different players to the table and have that conversation of who's got what and kind of put the puzzle together for the solution. The government down selects, we are a neutral facilitator. We do not pick the winners. So the government that's on the SOCOM side decides who they want to go forward with. And then we'll spin what comes out of that event or activity into one of those 3 that you see are on the right. So it could be a collaborative project order. That's how we get our tasking. So that would be a SoftWorks run, project order to go to the next step. Consignments or CRADAs, cooperative research and development agreements may come out of that. And then you've already heard the OTAs, the mid-tier acquisitions, and the FAR, typical FAR contract might also spin out of that. All right, next slide. So if you go to our website right now, you'll see one of the things we just started a couple of months ago is called Tech Tuesday. And by the way, if you're there, there's a join our ecosystem button. If you're not part of our ecosystem, please join. We don't ask for much. The most important thing in there is your email so we can contact you and let you know what we're looking for next. But on the Tech Tuesday part, if you have a transformational technology, and I'll explain that a little bit, we put technologies into 3 groups. So incremental technology would be maybe you have a rifle scope that's a 10x scope, and now you've come up with a 20x scope in the same size. That would be an incremental improvement. The next part we have is adjacent technology. Those are technologies that exist today, usually in the commercial world, but are not used on how we would use them on the defense side. So maybe there's a Raspberry Pi and a software-defined radio that are put together to make some kind of electronic warfare tool. That would be an adjacent type of technology. And then the last one is transformational. These are truly the game changers, right? This is the Edison light bulb, the Wright brothers airplane, telephone. These are the things that are really game changers is what we're looking for here on our Tech Tuesday. It's like a Shark Tank kind of presentation. You'll get 15 minutes to present, and it's an all government audience. You can see there on the slide several of the people, DHS, SOCOM. It's not just SOCOM. A lot of folks sit in on this, and these are the decision makers. And you will present to the all government audience with 15 minutes, about 10 minutes of Q&A, and then we move on to the next one. And we do 4 every Tuesday. So you can submit your transformational technology, we'll review it. If it's considered transformational, we'll get you into that Tech Tuesday slot, and you'll be able to pick which day you would like to present and what time slot. Don't worry if you don't get picked up. Some things are really very interesting technology, but not transformational. We'll still get that if you so give us the okay to get that in front of the SOCOM partners that might be interested in the technology. So just because you don't get picked up for Tech Tuesday, don't fret. There are several companies that have had their technology picked up because they weren't transformational, but SOCOM was interested in what they were doing. Okay, next slide. I think that was it. So please join our ecosystem. If you haven't already, there's the website, softworks.org. And look forward to hearing from you guys, all the startups. If you've got really cool technology, we have a way to take you from, we're looking for TRL 4 to 6 type stuff. So minimum viable product, or if you're very close to a minimum viable product, we'll take that also. So if you're a TRL 3 but you're almost there, give us a call and then we can get you up to that next level. Thank you very much.
Unmuted.
Great, thank you very much. And so we now have one of, I guess, the last on the list that has X. I noticed a lot of whether it's SoftWorks and AFWorks. So next is AFWorks. Steve, you're up next. Thanks. Steve is remote today.
Outstanding. Hear me okay? Any echo? I hear some echo. Do you want my mute?
Yeah, Joyce will kill it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me today. So Captain Steve Lawver, Active Duty Air Force, one of the founders of AFWorks, the Air Force Tech Accelerator that was up in Boston, as well as most recently Air Force Ventures. I'm going to focus the conversation today on Air Force Ventures primarily, and then I'll open it up kind of broadly to some of the other AFWorks portfolio items that might be valuable to you as well. Next slide. So I'll start with broadly the mission, and I'll move fairly quick to try to make back some of our time. But we aim at Air Force Ventures to leverage commercial technology to deliver better capability to the warfighter and faster. Now, that might seem like it's full of platitudes, but there's a couple really key points there. The first is commercial technology. So we're specifically interested in those things that have a commercial market and potential and use case, as well as to a potential Air Force use case. Right, so we very much care about that. Speed is kind of bred into us. It's down to our bones. So whether it's the award cycle, whether it's the actual execution of the contracts, if we can get things done faster, that is a better outcome for us. Simplicity is very important as well. So we recognize that when you're doing the risk calculus of whether or not to try to engage with the government or the Air Force, you're thinking, how long is this going to take? How complicated it is? And those are all things that can prevent you from even trying. Our hypothesis was that if we lowered the barrier to entry significantly, we would get more and better companies trying to work with us. We've seen that largely proved true in the past. And then also we are taking a approach to national security that is to the max extent trying to leverage private capital. 2019 numbers, $500 billion of private R&D in the US, which is about 4 or 5x the amount of public R&D. So we recognize that to keep pace with our adversaries, we need to be tapping into all of the brilliance that's out there across the country. Next slide. What I want to point out here is that we want to be a stepping stone to the success of your company, not necessarily the end goal, right? So we have structured our programs in such a way that they help to incentivize further investment in your company. They help to get you to the next step, and they don't hinder you in any way. And that's the overall intent. We are always evolving over time, but we're just trying to make it such that we are expanding the competitor base when it comes to the industry that supports the government, as opposed to continuing this contraction of those that can work with us. Next slide. So here's the process. We run 3 cycles per year. The majority of the Air Force Ventures funding comes from the SBIR STTR program. And so it starts with phase 1, again, 3 cycles per year. And in this phase 1, the companies are given up to $50,000 and up to 90 days to conduct a feasibility study, where one of the core elements of that study is to determine if there is a validated need for their solution inside the Air Force. Right, so coming into this, you might not know who your customer is, but you need some time, and really that $50,000 is a way to reduce the cost of overhead while you perform that study of, is it worth your while to continue down the road with us, and vice versa. Do we want to work with you? And I should back up a little bit and say that any company, so any type of solution, it is not bounded by a certain industry or technology area, is eligible for this phase 1, and the result is we make many awards per year in this category. So roughly 1,000 per year at those 50,000. If you are able to find an Air Force customer who says, I want this solves a problem for me, and I'm willing to engage with you as a company during this phase 2, then you can receive the phase 2 funding, which is up to $750,000. We encourage matching funding from government sources, i.e. their dollars as skin in the game, and private sources as well, which we'll talk about. We make roughly 300 to 500 of these awards per year. And during the course of the phase 1, trying to get you to phase 2, we do offer facilitation at scale in a way that helps you to find your customer. Though as a startup, we do put a lot of the onus of finding your customer and understanding them on you. And then finally, there's the third category, which we call the strategic fund increase. You can see scale is on the slide here, up to $15 million awards. We make roughly 20 of those per year. And we require matched funding here. So we're saying if we're putting in big dollars, we want to know that the interest is there from your private and or your government sources as well. And so that's kind of the stepping stone. And ultimately the goal, as with any SBIR funded effort, is getting to phase 3, where we as the Air Force are procuring your solution at scale, and you have a lot of, it kind of greases the skids, i.e. the competition rules are simpler for you because you came in through that particular gateway. Next slide. Eligibility, so US owned and controlled, so 51% is majority. Small business concerns, so less than 500 employees, including affiliates. I do want to point out that majority VC owned or hedge fund owned companies are not eligible for 20.3, but our intent is to have them eligible. And when I say 20.3, it's the third cycle of this year, but the intent is for them to be eligible for 21.1, the first cycle of next year. Next slide. The important thing here is that we're on a vector that's up and to the right. So green is private funding leveraged against the companies we worked with. Blue is non-SBIR funding from other government sources. And then orange is the SBIR funding via this Air Force Ventures process. And so as you can see, the amount of private funds being leveraged are increasing and to the right and are greater than the amount of SBIR funding we've put against it. Next slide. The other thing that's really important here is that we are expanding that industrial base that's willing to work with the Air Force. You can see the stars where we started doing this program, and it has significantly increased the number of new entrants that have never worked with the Air Force before or have never worked with SBIR before in working with us. So in the last 2 years, we've seen over 1,000 new companies inside the Air Force's portfolio as a result of this program. Next slide. So we were asked the question, what's the relevance to robotics and AI? I'm going to point you to this link here rather than talking to each of these, but we have a 72-page document that even though phase 1 is available to any company that has a dual use solution, if you can apply and reference one of these focus areas, of which we have 72 pages worth of them, then the moment you're awarded your phase 1, you're connected with that sponsor within the Air Force, and it streamlines the customer discovery process, making it more likely to get you to phase 2. Long story short, robotics and AI were mentioned 43 times in that document, so please do take a look. Next slide. And this is my last one. We are open for the third cycle right now. So the easiest way is just go to beta.sam.gov and search Air Force SBIR. We will be the first hit, or you can follow the link here. We opened for applications today. We close on 22 October, and the target is 60 days from close to award for that big batch of phase 1 companies. We also allow for direct to phase 2 for those companies that already know who their customer is, and they've already developed that phase 2 trial with a validated need. So full instructions are available there. Recommend taking a look. And then more broadly, AFWERX does a lot of things, not just Air Force Ventures. So please check out afwerx.af.mil to see the full suite of capabilities here. It's really a pleasure being here, and I look forward to seeing your questions later on.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Steve. Next up is Cramden Alvarez with DIU.
All right, thanks. So I'm actually broadcasting to you from my peaceful basement. Next slide. All right, so DIU was created around the middle of the last decade with a specific mission. That is to, much like AFWERX, accelerate the movement of commercial sector technologies that have relevance to priority DoD problems, to accelerate that movement from the commercial sector into the DoD, thereby transform military capabilities, and then finally to strengthen that national security innovation base. So to move the DoD from working with primarily just those large contractors like the Lockheeds and Northrop Grummons, without a doubt they have their place, but the goal was to expand the range of firms and organizations that the DoD works with drastically. And that remains our mission today. We've coalesced around a few different tech areas, and we split those up within DIU as portfolios: AI and machine learning, autonomy, cyber, human systems, space. And in a few days, we're going to add a 6th portfolio, advanced energy and materials. Next slide. All right, so the part you probably care about the most is our process and how you could potentially fit into that process. Something that's somewhat unique to DIU is that all of our projects start with a DoD customer, a DoD partner, with a specific problem that they want to solve, funds to do the R&D for that problem, to solve that problem, and then also funds to transition and scale that problem up front. So we work with that DoD partner. Typically, partners will come to us with requirements. We try to steer away from that because requirements imply that the best solution has already been found. We know that's rarely the case. And so we try to guide that partner towards coming up with a problem statement. And sometimes this is as short as 1 sentence. Normally it's 2 or 3 paragraphs long. Once we're at that point, we'll move into a diligence phase where our commercial engagement team looks out at the commercial sector, at the market, to try to get some sense that there actually are viable solutions to whatever problem it is that we're trying to work. At the same time, our defense engagement team, of which I'm a member, will look across the DoD, will look across the other federal agencies, and try to find other organizations with similar problems that could benefit from common solutions, with the goal of potentially pooling funds in that ensuing prototype. So as long as all that checks out, we'll then start the meat of our process, what we call the commercial solutions opening. It's an other transactions based process. If you're not familiar, just Googling other transactions authority will bring up some of the differences with OTAs and traditional government contracting. So we use this OT based, this other transaction based process to get through the prototype and production period. And it starts with the posting of our problem statement on our website for 2 weeks. During that 2-week period, we accept solutions in plain English, a 5-page white paper, 5 or 10 to 15 slide deck, explaining how that organization intends to address the problem that's been presented. You certainly don't need a large contracting department or legal department of any sort to be able to submit these kinds of solution briefs. Once those are collected at the end of the 2-week period, we'll sit down with our DoD partner, sort through those. We'll go through a period of a couple of down selects, bring a selected number of firms in for in-person pitches or virtual pitches. And at the end of that down select period, we'll typically put between 1 and 5 firms on contract to start a prototype period that lasts between 12 and 24 months. Now, at the end of that prototyping period, assuming the prototype proves successful, one of the unique rules of other transactions is that we can go directly to production without having to recompete, which can be, of course, very lucrative for firms involved. Now, as far as what stage of technology we're looking at, I think it's really based in the fact that we're looking for a 12 to 24 month period of performance. To get through the prototype period in about that amount of time should, I think, inform what level of tech maturity that we're typically looking at. Next slide. All right, so DIU is effectively a broker between priority DoD problems and the commercial sector. Since most of you are in the commercial sector in this audience, we'll just look at the bottom right of this slide, what we offer to commercial firms. It's a very, very simple process. You can avoid a lot of the obstacles that previously existed to small firms doing business with the government. The process I laid out is effectively how it works. I oftentimes tell people if you were to try to contract to put an addition on your house, the process isn't that much different from that process. Our contracts are highly negotiable from IP to payment milestones to deliverables, et cetera. And then we also offer a dedicated PM for each project to help guide that firm through the process, which can be particularly important for firms that just aren't familiar with how to navigate the DoD or the federal government. As mentioned, there is the potential for large contracts at the end of a prototype period. And then lastly, there's that opportunity to work on some priority DoD problems. Next slide. All right, I know we're just about out of time, but a quick example of a DIU success. About 19 months ago, we started this project to deliver a cybersecure small UAS to the Army and the rest of the DoD. Without going into all of the details, there were 6 firms that started out in this prototype period. 5 made it all the way through. And as of this week, all 5 firms are available for purchase. Their products are available for purchase on GSA to all of the DoD, federal government, and state and local government as well. So 19 months from the time we posted that AOI to the point where they're available for mass purchase on GSA. That's all I have. I invite you to visit our website, diu.mil, 2 links in particular, work with us or contact us for more questions. And please feel free to put any questions in the chat and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you.
Unmuted.
There we go. Now it's it. All right. Next up, we have the Jake and Greg Allen. Greg, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Greg Allen, the Chief of Strategy and Communications for the Department of Defense's Joint AI Center. Like some of the other organizations here, we are quite young. We were established only in the middle of 2018. And we did not receive money and personnel until maybe February of 2019. So it feels like we're about 18 months old as an organization. The pace of growth in that time has been quite extraordinary. We are now up to over 100 military and civilian personnel with an annual budget of more than $200 million. Why has there been this sort of frantic pace of growth? Because artificial intelligence is the Secretary of Defense's top technology modernization priority. So whereas some of the other organizations here have sort of a broader mission set around innovation and engagement with the startup ecosystem, our mandate is more technology oriented, specifically looking at artificial intelligence and especially machine learning enabled artificial intelligence. The basic reason why we're so interested in that is that there's a host of applications that used to be sort of expensive and complicated. And if you're able to successfully apply machine learning, if there's a good fit between the nature of the problem and the nature of machine learning capabilities, then suddenly things are practical and powerful in a way that they did not used to be previously. So our mission is to accelerate the adoption of machine learning and artificial intelligence into the entire Department of Defense. We are an Office of the Secretary of Defense organization, unlike some of the other organizations which are allied to a specific military service branch. We actually work with folks from every single service branch and look for missions where machine learning is a good solution potential for the problems. The technology overwhelmingly, though, is developed by private companies, and we work with private companies really across the spectrum in terms of where they are in terms of their newness and maturity as a company. And I'll get to that in a bit more, but I want to first sort of say, what are the three basic things that the JAIC is up to? I mentioned that our mission is to accelerate the adoption of artificial intelligence into the DoD, and we try and tackle that through sort of three different lines of effort. The first of which is that we actually have a policy and process reform arm. The Joint AI Center actually chairs the DoD-wide AI governance process. And the point of that is to identify what are the policies, what are the processes that make it tough to adopt artificial intelligence in the DoD. All of you companies out there who've tried to work with the Department of Defense are probably familiar with some of the things that make it tough to do business with us. And so we actually have a mandate from the Secretary of Defense to identify, what are those things that are making it hard to do business, and then make recommendations to change those policies in order to make it easier. So the goal ultimately is to lower the barriers to entry across sort of every aspect, and that includes acquisition, but beyond acquisition, in the requirement setting process, in the inter-DoD working process, we're really looking for what are those things that make AI adoption hard, and how do we reform them to make it faster. So that's actually a pretty unique mandate. It's relatively unusual for an organization that is actually developing and fielding technology to be fused with a policy element. And so in that regard, our organizational structure in and of itself is a bit of an experiment in the entire Department of Defense. So far, going pretty well. The second thing that we're trying to do is to lower, I said that we're trying to lower the policy and process barriers. The second thing we're trying to do is to lower the technology barriers to entry. If any of you are familiar with Department of Defense cybersecurity requirements and software development requirements, these are pretty onerous burdens. And we believe that one of the things that we can do to actually make it easier to develop software and software-enabled capabilities for the DoD is to get a modern software development platform that is optimized for the unique requirements of AI and machine learning available across the entire Department of Defense. There are specific organizations throughout the DoD that have successfully developed this sort of system, either at the service level or for a specific suite of technologies. Air Force Kessel Run sort of stands out as a gold standard in terms of actually having a continuous integration, continuous delivery software pipeline where they can push updates into the field every single day, just as modern software developers for leading commercial companies are familiar with doing. So we'd like to replicate that capability, but do so in a way that is optimized for the unique requirements of software development in a machine learning environment, and do so not just for the Air Force or one particular part of the Air Force, but do so in a way that is available to DoD software developers and their industry partners across the entire Department of Defense. That is a significant task, but it is one that we believe, if we succeed, will significantly lower the technical barriers to entry for developing high-quality software and AI-enabled software in particular across the entire Department of Defense. And that initiative, we actually have a prime contractor that we signed earlier this year. But that does not mean that it's the end of companies being able to work with us. It just means that the primary vehicle by which you would get access to Jake would be through that prime contractor, which in this particular case for the Joint Common Foundation is Deloitte. So that's the second big thing we're up to. The third big thing that we do is we actually fund the development and fielding of specific AI-enabled capabilities. And this is across what we call our mission initiatives, which is the sort of series of portfolios of areas of interest that we have. In the FY20 budget, that includes areas like humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, predictive maintenance, cybersecurity, intelligent business automation, joint warfighting, and warfighter health. And several of the programs that I just mentioned actually have projects within them where we are partnered with some of the other organizations who you've heard speak from today, including DIU, for example. And each of these areas has, multiple development efforts underway. Some of these development efforts are, $100,000 type projects, and other of these development efforts are tens of millions of dollars size projects. And in terms with, how we actually get access to our industry partners, we use a pretty diverse set of practices. So whereas some of the other organizations who you've heard from today have independent acquisition authority, which means they can relatively easily sort of sign their own contracts, we have to partner with other organizations to develop, a contracts vehicle through which we can acquire. DIU has the ability to let contracts, and so we partner with them on a great number of our efforts. But the types of contracts that we sign are everything from OTAs, which tend to be a little bit more small business friendly, at least in terms of small businesses that want to prime for those vehicles. And I mean, when I say small businesses, I mean more entrepreneurial startup type companies. But other parts of our projects are just traditional federal acquisition regulation FAR Part 15 contracts. For instance, the ones that have prime integrators use this. But I hope you all won't be discouraged from that, because actually some of the largest dollar amounts that we've let that have ended up in the hands of entrepreneurial small companies have gone through those types of contract vehicles just in a subcontractor relationship. So the prime contractor can handle a lot of the difficult acquisition contracting types issues for those things. But we use, commercial solutions openings, OTAs, FAR type contracts, all of those are really available. Just this past couple weeks ago, we hosted the first ever Department of Defense AI Symposium, where hundreds of companies, came and presented in their exhibition booths and really had an opportunity to hear about not just the requirements of the Jake, but of the broader AI community that we're responsible for synchronizing. So I hope this was useful to you and that you got to learn a little bit more about our requirements. And we already have a number of partners in the Boston area, but we're always hungry for new and better ones. So thanks very much.
Unmuted.
There we go. Thanks, Greg. So last but certainly not least is Matt Correa with the Army Futures Command.
Hello. So first off, I want to thank Joyce and team for getting us all together. It's not a small feat, and we all have a collective mindset together as entrepreneurs looking for solutions for our technologies. And what I want to go through today is a little bit from a lens of CCDCOM, which is our Combat Capability Command. We live out there in Natick, Massachusetts, and we have some strong partnerships here. I see John Beatty from the state. Thank you for your advocacy, sir. And some other people here like Colonel Corsetti from the 75th Innovation Command. And I know we all had some some other activities for the AFWorks and all the other DIU that was going on. Next slide, please. So one thing I want to talk about is now you're all card-carrying members of the Army Future Command. And from that, why I say that is because we're all here looking to find things. So we are finding things and technologies with each and every one of you and how you bring that to us. So we sit right in between the find it and the forge it. So Army Future Command is really about forging these technologies, being agile, leaning forward, having a lot of things that we're talking about today, and then ultimately fielding it in a rapid fashion. And a lot of it is due to this value proposition in the middle and this MVP style where we do these iterative prototyping, getting fielding activities. Next slide, please. So when Joyce reached out to me and asked me for some of these requirements and actually how the Army is looking for it, one of the things we looked at is all these requirements documents. You know, when we forward face to industry and really getting to what we're looking for. So how do we actually get that in front of you and actually get your technologies into these activities? So I want you to pay attention to these documents that I put up here, and we're going to put them on the splash page for you to actually reference, because that really details out how we want to do things. And at the end of my presentation, I'm going to give you a 9-minute video that you can take away, and it's up on YouTube, that actually captures the essence of how we want to use these technologies and actually puts a mental model of how they would be deployed in an urban setting. Next slide. So from there, our user requirements actually bin these things and these focal areas. And ARL Northeast, as well as Natick Soldier Center, we're really focused on some of the platoon organic UAVs, and we're working with some of the partners that I see in the room today, some of the unattended sensors, and some of the exoskeletons that are out there and actually augmenting how our future soldiers will actually be empowered and protected on the battlefield of next. Because we're actually shaping to where we're going to be. It's more of an urban setting as well as more of an austere environment. So I want you to think about how these technologies are going to empower our warfighters. Next slide, please. From there, for the AI, it's really about maneuver and maneuverability. How do we actually get people and products into these austere environments, and how do we actually put them in a place that they can overmatch the adversary? So that's the whole mindset. It's not about your technology and what that has for that individual piece, it's how it's working as a system. And we actually have to look at that, and the Army is setting the conditions that we actually have these big test venues that look at that and the intersection of the individual technologies and how they work as a collective. Next page, please. From there, locally, we've been working with out on the Joint Base Cape Cod. We have the ability to fly UAVs. We have the ability to push up some of the exoskeletons out there, as well as Fort Devens. So keep your ears out, and we actually have some test venues that are coming up to actually bring your technologies out to us, see how they fly out there, see how they operate with our soldiers. And actually some of our project officers are out there actually doing that and harvesting this activity. Actually see how they are used in theater and giving you feedback for those type of activities. Next slide, please. Another venue that you should be listening for is Thunderstorm. It's something that happens every year, and it's out in New York City. And what it is it's in the city itself, as well as subterranean. They go and they look at how all these technologies work in real use vignettes. And the vignettes are, how do you do clearing through subterranean activities? How do you clear a building? And then they give you feedback. And this is a really beneficial to each and every one of you to actually come to that event with your technology, get plugged in and get real feedback. And that's on an annual cycle. I give you a couple of examples what they did last year here. Next slide, please. Followed by a new capability that CCDCOM, Combat Capabilities Command, is actually in placing in Maryland. We are putting together a test bed for autonomy for that. Actually, we can bring in all these systems, robotic assets, air assets, see how they work, see a lot of the electromagnetic interfacing, and see how they actually can be deployed in some of our future operational scenarios, also known as the future operating environment. And in this test bed, ARL is actually working collectively with us to actually show how these technologies actually benefit the soldier and actually provide overmatch. Next slide, Joyce. So one of the things I know everyone's interested in, how do you get money, right? So there's a couple, I'm going to give you a couple different ways in a few minutes, but one is at Soldier Center, we have the traditional BAA that's always out there right now. So you can actually apply to it. The BAA is set up like every other government activity, and from there it's funneled to the right person. So this BAA actually brings us to our small UAV company, and I know some of people in here have used it. Next slide, please. The next one is something myself and my team, we hold innovation workshops. We held one last year. Dr. Julie Chen actually held us at 110 Canal Street up at UMass Lowell on human performance and sensors. I know Dexter and team participated. We led about $5 million worth of contract to small businesses. And actually we're seeing that prototyping work right now, and we're actually bringing that to field. Over 250 people presented at that event. We got real feedback from soldiers, SMEs, and then industry and academia to kind of get that collision point. I saw that word a bunch of times on some of the slides earlier, those collision points and how that actually happens. And Dexter and team was partnered up with Drexel as well as UMass Lowell. So we're not parochial just to Massachusetts. We're actually looking at bringing in this ecosystem. We're having another event at the end of October. They focused on small platoon organic UAVs. That will be held at the Koskis Research Institute in Burlington. We'll be having the requirements generation from Fort Benning down there. We'll be having some user communities, 75th Innovation Command members will be there, some of our subject matter experts. And this event will be over a 2-day period, and it will really bring in the innovation ecosystem to kind of get some of those technologies that we might not get through the traditional BAAs. We are using what they call a technology investment agreement, which is a TIA, which is a new version of an OTA. So we're exploring that type of activities, and we're partnered up with OSD on the national manufacturing initiatives to really bring those pieces to bear and actually get a manufacturing component to these things. So it's not a one and done for technology and that kind of gets shelved up. It's actually partnering up with some manufacturing activities. Next slide, please. ARL, the Northeast Campus, Ms. Claudia Quigley is the new director over there, and she's at the Koskis Research Institute. I know Ms. Stokes is with us today, representing them. And they have some open activities for their STRONG program, as well as I hyperlinked some other opportunities down there for funding through ARL in their main campus down in the Maryland, Aberdeen area. So these areas are open all the time for some opportunity spaces, and when you submit through there, they'll be funneled to the right person for agreements. One other thing I'd like to highlight during this process, we have partnered up with DIU, so it's not this one and done from Army or Air Force. We are collectively working together in this innovation ecosystem to kind of partner up together to make sure we get the best of breed technologies across the DoD to actually see for multiple use. Next slide, please. I'm going to play a video for a second, but I wanted to highlight a couple things here. I think earlier presenter touched on it about the tech verticals. So if you look at Massachusetts and New England region, we really have this technology verticals where we get industry and academia and DoD all focused on the Internet of Things, the autonomy, some of the smart materials and the medical technologies. And we need to harness that power and actually bring that to bear on DoD problem space as a community, as well as drive down the cost for our homeland defenders and dual use for our municipalities. On the right-hand side, a little clip from the video that's down below on the YouTube, this I'm going to actually play for a second, but it really highlights two things. In the top area, that's a video in the subterranean sector. I know Dexter and his team, when they saw that, they could envision where their programs actually could be placed inside of our new operational scenarios. So they actually wrote a very robust and rich program connected to that. Next down, you'll see a large-scale UAV, which is a glider with a 400-pound capability, which is something that Soldier Center is actually on contract with AeroVironment. And you're going to hear from AeroVironment in a little bit. And AeroVironment was a small business at one time. And Natick has been a partner with AeroVironment since it was small, over a decade ago, and actually watched them grow up and nurtured that system, actually put that in place within the SOF community, as well as our general use for our Army. So I want to let you know that this isn't something new for Natick. This is something that our leadership at Natick actually embraces, gets this innovation ecosystem, and actually puts that to bear on our problem sets. Joyce, if you wouldn't mind playing that video, you can see in the middle of the video, about 7 minutes, you can see this UAV launch, and then we'll take it from there. Now, as you can see, this is just a couple seconds of the video, but you can start to see the operational use case. Instead of a bunch of paper in front of you or a bunch of PowerPoints, a video that gets the scientists, the engineers, the business developers' mind's eye of what we want to capabilities we want. So we do have a few more videos to show, and we have them up on the AFC splash page, as well as Natick Soldier Center, CCDCOM Soldier Center, as well as CCDCOM ARL. And we look forward to partner up with you in the future. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Matt. We're going to take a short bio break now, and I apologize, we're running behind. Not a surprise, we had a lot of great presentations, amazing amount of information about all the different programs. I'm going to turn back to MITRE and go to their site because they're doing a great job of trying to figure out all of these and point you to the right contacts. But certainly, if you have any questions, send them along. We're going to try to keep it to like 5 minutes of a bio break. For those of you in the room, the bathrooms are straight through the door to the right. For everybody else, we'll try to get back at 3:35. Thank you.
Tom, I can't hear you. If you guys can hear me, I'll go. Okay. Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. Sorry I can't be there in person. Hopefully next year we can be there real time and have some discussion on AeroVironment and what I believe has contributed to how we've been most successful, and then some observations on the startup and DoD innovation community. Next chart, please. And I'll start here with just a quick background on AV in case you're not familiar with us. You just saw a video, hopefully that explains a lot of it, but we provide mission capabilities working at the crossroads of future defining capabilities in sensors, analytics, robotics, and connectivity. Next chart, please. And we invented several categories of unmanned systems and brought those to our customers. We're currently deployed worldwide with US and international customers. And we have a long heritage of breakthrough development. We happen to be celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. And another video is coming up next just to share some of those 50 years of accomplishments. So next chart and play the video, please. Okay, so now on to some thoughts on what I think are the major contributors to this success. First area is passion. Passion's a word not often used in robotics and engineering, but I really think it's the #1 driver. And the pictures here on the left is our founder, Paul McCrady, in the late 30s. And on the right is me in the early 80s. Wanted to win, they wanted to be champions, they wanted to be the first at doing something, they wanted to break world records. And so, you know, thinking through that, it's really not about aviation. Sure, that shows passion, there's passion for aviation, but it's really about how that passionate mindset changes to achieve incredible results. Paul didn't want to make airplanes. He wanted to make the world a better place. I think relating this to startups is probably something founders don't really have to think about. You almost have to be there to found a startup. But this allows you to take risks and be more willing to learn from failure and drive to achieve results. And I think you can use this concept though as a tool to leverage when you interact with your teams, when you hire people, when you select board members, when you deploy systems to evaluate, where is the passion and how can you leverage that mindset to achieve your objective? And you've already moved to the next chart, great. This is speaking to design elegance. And a lot of people think of this in different ways. Simplicity is usually included, and I include that as well, but reliability, robustness, sustainability is part of it, and it very often includes hidden complexity. We have a lot of examples of this in practice, but I'll share 2 examples here today. And if you'll play the first video, please. On the left is our Helios stratospheric platform in about 2001. And on this design, we used a highly flexible structure, which allows the aircraft to bend quite dramatically in order to accommodate the flight loads and turbulence. And this allows us to achieve an overall lighter weight structure, but at the expense of a more complex control system design and relatively unknown design space at the time. Of course, we've progressed quite a bit since then. And then on the right, this is a recovery test fixture we use to test our small UAS. And if you're not familiar with it, our systems, our fixed wing systems, do a deep stall landing technique, and you can play the video. This allows very easy use of easy recovery in a very small footprint, but at the expense of putting about 1,500 Gs on some of the subsystems and components. And so I consider both of these elegant design. In both cases, these approaches have allowed us to achieve operational performance and results that we otherwise wouldn't be possible. Next chart, please. So this is sometimes called customer collaboration. I think sleeping in the dirt is a better way to describe it. And we had folks from Natick talking earlier. I'm not actually sure if that's one of our Natick brethren there in that picture or not, but this was about the time frame we were working with Natick. And I think this is one of the key elements as we transition from being more of a R&D focus to more a product and capability focus. We always had customer and users in mind as a stakeholder, but during this SUAS development, we really took this to heart and partnered, acting as a team with the end users. And engineers were literally sleeping in the dirt. And that helped us get immediate feedback and understanding, validating the viability and value of our system, accelerating design cycles. And they usually were in austere places like this where you can see it's pretty cold and is many miles from civilization. But I think the other thing that really helps in this type of collaboration is it helps build evangelists for your product, both internally and externally. Next chart, please. And the next 3 charts kind of go together. The idea of perseverance here, or resilience, patience, tenacity, whatever you want to call it, is really addressing the time it takes to achieve what you might call success or an objective. AV is not quite the startup like we think of most startups today, but we did have a history of the normal pivots and shifting in our pursuits and learning fast, failing fast along the way, shifting strategies. But along the way, we created some things. On this chart, we show some that you're probably familiar with, and then others that have a legacy that you're probably not familiar that we worked on. But it includes things like wind farms in the early 70s, the prototype electric car for GM, high efficiency ceiling fans, high flow electric leaf blowers, electric assist bike. And next chart, please. And this is continuing that perseverance, right? This is more familiar. I think people will be more familiar with these in association with AV, but a history of successes and record-setting capabilities, systems in the Smithsonian collection. But go to the next chart. And this is that very same chart, but with a slightly different perspective. There's some good here, right? About the perseverance, right? We had the perseverance to stick with these concepts and follow them through and get the products to market and, really have success with it. But I think the bad or the negative part of this is if you look at the timelines there from proof of concept to, I call it full rate production, it's just too long, right? It would be great to be able to bring these capabilities way sooner. I will say though that I think that the more transformative and disruptive the capability that you're working on is, it's more difficult to achieve a shorter timeline. And I think in particular, if it's really transformative, your user, your operator, the end state is likely going to have to transform the way they do business to take advantage of it. And that's particularly challenging when you talk about DoD and changing the way the DoD does their job. Right? But this leads immediately to startup observations. Next chart, please. And here I will say that, on that theme, the number one piece of feedback I get, we work with a lot of small and early phase companies, and their number one issue I've seen, at least in working with DoD, is the time to funding. I had a few other thoughts on this chart that I think most of were covered before. In particular, Marissa from MITRE, she hit a bunch of this, so hopefully you saw that earlier today in our DoD innovation briefs this morning, covered a lot of this as well. So I won't revisit many of the things that were already hit, but maybe talk about a couple other areas here. So that timing is particularly an issue. I've visited a lot of these small startups that have said, hey, General so-and-so visited and he loved this and he had to have it right away. And 6 months later, there's still not an RFP, including with some of our innovation initiatives that we've talked about, right? I think there's still something to be said for working the timing aspect of this. The other piece that maybe hasn't really been discussed this morning, and maybe a little bit controversial, I wish I was there to have more of a discussion around this, but in the top left corner here, the conflicts between a commercially focused company, startup, and defense focused, I think creates conflicts in trying to achieve that dual use objective. It really helps to focus on one of those or phase it properly. And then that also kind of ties into the private venture funding, in that I think that, there's a lot of private venture that's not interested in anything to do with DoD, and they lack the understanding of DoD and they shy away from it. So I think one of the things maybe that wasn't mentioned earlier that could be beneficial, a lot of the DoD innovation enterprise is looking at how to leverage commercial and private venture. I think maybe another thing that would be beneficial is to maybe inspire more startups to focus purely on DoD, and also to inspire private equity to focus on DoD. And I know there's a few firms that are out there doing that now, but certainly it would be beneficial to have a lot more of that. And then last, I think it was mentioned this morning as well, or this afternoon for most of you guys, this morning for me, I think don't look past this concept of leveraging and partnering with established defense companies. I think a lot of startups shy away from that. They think they might be taken advantage of, or the big 800-pound gorilla is just going to take their technology away. It really can be an avenue to achieve the objective you're trying to get to, and provide some support and a transition to where you're trying to go. And I'll leave it at that, I guess. Next chart, last chart. In closing, at AV, we're always working towards that next step of future capability. I've shared some thoughts with you today on what's driven our success. And since I can't be there to have a discussion or dialogue on this, what I'd like is if you walk away from this with a challenge and inspiration to engage in dialogue around these ideas, and with your teams, and even on the government side, right? And think about that as you take your next steps in your pursuits. So again, thank you for the opportunity to talk today.
There we go. All right.
Muted.
Sorry, we're having a little challenge with the mute and unmute, and if we don't do that properly, we get wonderful feedback. So Scott, first of all, thank you very much. We really appreciate you joining us this morning, this afternoon, and talking a little bit about AeroVironment's experiences, and as you have grown. Congratulations on your 50 years. AeroVironment is a great partner of MassRobotics. We love working with those guys. They've opened up a facility here in Burlington, and actually they're expanding to Wilmington, I believe. So it's great to have them here locally, and obviously a great supplier to the DoD. We're going to move on to some relatively short presentations by a number of startups, and we're going to start with Alex Lorman from Thayer Mahan. Alex is here locally, so we'll switch to Alex. We'll just leave it with a camera there.
Thanks so much, appreciate it. I'm Alex Lorman. I'm the Director of Research and Development at Thayer Mahan. We are located in Groton, Connecticut, although we have a facility up here, but COVID, et cetera. We are a startup that has grown from 4 people 2 years ago to 55 people now, and we've actually made our first acquisition, which is crazy. Next slide, please. Sorry, the buttons do work. That's cool. Fundamentally, what we want to do is force multiply the Navy space. Our founder is a retired Navy 3-star. He was head of all of the Navy submarines. Basically, you've got a $3 billion asset that has 100-odd people on it that is run on the warm rocks, and you don't want that to be in certain places. You have a lot of risk with that vessel, although it's an exquisite sensor. Instead, for $1 million, you want a robot that you can have a zillion of, that okay, the enemy finds 1, it doesn't matter. We have so many robots, you can find 10 of them and it won't matter. We can port that data back and build the battle space picture much, much faster, much, much more accurately. It's also fast, it's fast to deploy, and I don't care if one goes where it shouldn't. Next slide, please. We're blasting through this at super fast pace. If anyone wants to follow up afterwards, please do. So we have really 3 main business lines. One is passive acoustic monitoring. For those of you who have a submarine background, that means listening to things in the ocean, specifically enemy things. So we actually just came back from deploying 4 of these vehicles in support of United States Southern Command off of Florida somewhere, and listening to actual things in the water, which was great. We ran those that deployment was about 2.5 months right in the middle of COVID, but props to the DoD, they didn't stop funding us, so that's great. As you can see on the extreme right, these vehicles are incredibly hard to see. We were doing sight range testing with them, and we just about ran them over and we knew where they were. Next slide, please. We have a electronic monitoring and ELINT platform. So this is again built on the Waveglider platform. This is a little bit easier to see. This can do recording, DF, and transmission in near real time of large sections of the radio and RF spectrum. I can talk to you more about that if you're interested. This also deployed for Joint Interagency Task Force South for about 3 months 2 years ago, and then again this year. So this platform's been out for a while. We've learned a lot about what breaks in the ocean, and the short answer is everything. Next slide, please. This is a great segue into our next speaker, Jeff Bartkowski. We have 2 of these, actually. That yellow torpedo-like thing is a synthetic aperture side scan sonar. That means that you can see incredibly accurately on the seafloor with sound. So you can tow this thing behind a ship at 8 knots, and you'll pretty much see lobsters in pots. I'm not really exaggerating when I say that. It has a 3-centimeter resolution that's range independent, so you're going to see that at 200 meters out from your towfish as well as directly under it. I believe, and Jeff can correct me in the next talk, I believe we have the only 2 of these in the US right now. We're actively pursuing both DoD uses for them and civilian uses for them. This is a great mixed use technology. The technology's out of Canada with Kraken, and we operate it and have built a significant amount of infrastructure behind the scenes to run it successfully and run the missions that DoD wants to run. Our next step is integrating it onto an unmanned underwater vehicle. Next slide, please. So this is more about where we're taking our data. So we have a 24/7 operations center in Groton, Connecticut, which is cool. It's a bunch of TVs on the wall. What we have more importantly is AWS GovCloud, and the fact we can scale that instantaneously to the size of the data we need. If you want to put out 100 vehicles, really we're just paying a bigger monthly bill. We don't need to go out and build another building, for instance, from the data side. From the hardware side, it might differ. But AWS GovCloud and basically every commercial piece of software and connectivity helps us do our mission faster. And I'll come back to that in a second. Next slide, please. Cool, I'm out of slides. This is an incredibly abbreviated presentation, but bigger picture, speaking to the DoD stakeholders real quick, what would help us do our job for you faster is getting rid of contracting paperwork. I'm sure you've heard that one before, but we've sat around doing nothing for months because we didn't have a contract in place, or someone couldn't get the correct color of money in the correct pot at the correct time. We're waiting for a fiscal year to end, but the contract deliverable date didn't move right with that. So we ended up getting slammed, and we delivered a product because we're a small, agile startup filled with really talented engineers, but let's never do that again. The second thing is secure and classified comms. We're dealing with this one right now. We have a DoD partner who wants us to participate in an event that would require we have classified secret on the vehicle. That's really hard. Getting this all to work and to be approved in even a year time frame is a major technical lift. That shouldn't be the case, given that all of the commercial technologies we use are better than NSA Type 1 encryption. This is silly. Like, this should stop. And before someone takes me out for saying all that. That's probably 5 minutes. I look forward to following up with you all later. Anyone who comes down to the Groton area is absolutely welcome to have a tour. We have a bunch of robots in the shop right now. It's pretty fun. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Alex. And as Alex mentioned, next up is Jeff from Kraken. So we're really excited. As some of you know, we house about 53 startups here. For us, when startups start working together, we think that that's really the value of our facility and the value of what we do. And so we're excited that both Alex and Jeff are working together. We have that on a number of other companies, and we think it's just a really great way to go. So next up is Jeff.
There we go. Looks like I'm green now. Okay, thanks, Tom. Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, awesome, because I can't hear you. Thank you, Alex. While it's always difficult to follow the fabulous Alex Lorman, I'm gonna do my best here. I worked with Alex previously at Sea Machine, so we've known each other for a long time, and it's great that we still get to work together. My name is Jeff Bartkowski with Kraken Robotics. Here you're seeing a picture of the USS Bass off Rhode Island, where we teamed with Thayer Mahan for a catfish towed SAS survey as part of a NOAA OER emerging tech demo last year. SAS stands for synthetic aperture sonar, which provides extremely high resolution sonar imagery above and beyond traditional side scan sonar you may have previously seen. SAS is used for mine hunting and other strategic applications. If these slides are shared later, you can click on that link down the bottom there, and you learn more about the missions to document the subs on Rhode Island waters, or just Google NOAA and Kraken, and it should pop right up. So next slide, Tom. Okay, so for this flash talk, I'll be very quickly talking about some of the recent updates at Kraken, and won't have a lot of time for specific details. So please feel free to reach out to me with follow-up questions you may have. Here you see in the lower right-hand corner our new man-portable SAS payload system. And this is important because it retrofits existing in-water 7.5-inch to 9-inch diameter man-portable platforms and turn them into the SAS vehicles. Man-portable is important because that's the largest number of hulls that the U.S. Navy has, is in the man-portable class. So this payload utilized our new 300-meter rated lightweight SAS arrays, which are thinner and lighter than our deeper MinSAS arrays, and incorporates our new Gen 3 real-time SAS processor. Again, important because this reduces the onboard SAS processing power from 75 watts down to 15 watts. So swap, size, weight, and power is always important working with the military. Well, this payload was originally developed for the REMUS 100 as part of a Navy program. We will be trialing it on a REMUS 300 later, but we also designed adapter rings, which allowed to fit Riptide 1 and 2 MPs, Gavia vehicles, and the Ivor 4. So if you're already working with small UUVs in your program or looking to add higher resolution sonar capabilities, give us a ring and we'll get a SAS on board. If you're in the market for a new UUV, please ask the manufacturers about how you too can release the Kraken. Next slide, Tom. Okay, so on the SAS processing side, Kraken has just released our new Ultra HD processing algorithms, which enable our current hardware, so existing hardware that's in the field and hardware moving forward, to increase the resolution from 3 centimeter by 3 centimeter, which is about 1 inch by 1 inch, that Alex had just mentioned, to 1.9 by 2.1 centimeter. And Kraken's happy here because we're the first guys to commercially break the 1-inch SAS resolution barrier. So this is practical, measurable resolution, not just theoretical paperwork here. So in the lower right of your screen there, you see a small, bright object in 70 meters of range with familiar but potentially concerning shape. Zooming in on that in the upper left reveals it's actually a common 55-gallon drum. So depending on your specific mission requirements, this high level of resolution can eliminate the need to further interrogate or dive on an object of interest and classify as a non-threat from the first pass. This effectively reduces the MCM timeline, and as some of the other Thermo Hand employees know, keeping the guys out of the water. Slide 4, Tom. So on the also on the processing front, Kraken can now offer seamless SAS processing. Traditionally, Kraken would process our SAS data in about 50-meter along track lengths, and that gave the processor on board a manageable chunk of data and keep up with in real time. Again, we're processing either on the towfish or on the vehicle and processing the SAS data. So we're now able to process in beamform instead of on a 50-meter along track. We can do it on a ping-by-ping basis. So every time the sonar pings, we're processing. This allows the user to set the along track length of SAS tiles to match the survey line lengths or whatever tiles fits into their processing workflows. And again, ping-by-ping processing also improves overall quality of the mosaics and reduces motion artifacts. So this is an ideal aid to SAS on motion man-portable vehicles, which face larger motion dynamics than their larger heavyweight vehicles, just due to the size of them. So in this picture here, you can see a 235-meter long by about 80 meters across seamless SAS tile. What appears to be some type of dredge scrapes on the bottom off of Rhode Island, possibly from a clam dredge or something along that lines. So this is starboard side imagery from one of the catfish, toad SAS, and was originally about 500 meters long, but it cut it down to fit on the screen. Zooming in, you can actually see that those dredge scrapes are about 2.5 meters wide, and the imagery of high enough resolution for bottom classifications or habitat studies. And the catfish makes an ideal ghost trap hunter as well. So Tom, moving along, slide 5, almost done here, guys. So this is the catfish that Alex had just briefly mentioned. It's our high-speed, actively stabilized towed SAS system. This fish can run at 4 to 10 knots, provide up to 200 meters of range per side, and allowing for a very high area coverage rate of 4 square kilometers an hour. Catfish was designed from the beginning to be towed from USVs, unmanned surface vessels, and has advanced obstacle avoidance, bottom following, and remote operations and data transfer capability that we also work on with there. It's basically a high-speed AUV without a propeller. So on the top right is our brand new autonomous launch and recovery system, called ALARS, and there's a link down below at the video. You guys can check at a later time. And on the bottom right is some of the imagery showing the real-time data products of both combined bathymetry and high-resolution imagery. So pleased to announce that Catfish was recently selected by both the Polish and Royal Danish Navies as their towed SAS on the new Cormoran MCMVs and USV-based Mine Hunter program. So this is really important for a small company like Kraken going head-to-head with Raytheon, Thales, Northrop Grumman, the big guys. So we beat them and we won. So our friends at Thermahan have 2 Catfish systems here in the US. Reaching out to them is the fastest way to get some Catfish on your survey. And last slide, Tom. Okay, and so here's some another product that we offer is Kraken C-Power pressure tolerant batteries. We're getting a lot of interest in these batteries for deep, large diameters AUVs, which you'll hear about shortly, and seabed power sources. What makes them different from traditional pressure tolerant batteries is that they are gel encapsulated, require no oil compensators, and so effectively they have a higher energy density since a lot of the battery's mass is not wasted in pressure housing and oil compensators. They're 6,000 meter rated and offering several voltage and capacity configurations. On the right side there, you can see our Hugin 6000 integration, where we're able to fit 4 20 kilowatt hour batteries for a total of 80 kilowatt hours on board the vehicle, which replaced the OEM 55 kilowatt hour payload. So this increased the mission durations from 50 hours to 100 hours, which you can obviously understand the benefits of that. We left some of our smaller 2.6 kilowatt hour batteries. That's about it, everyone. Thank you very much. Please feel free to reach out with any questions. And now looking forward to see some next talk from our friends at Dive Technologies, who are also very good friends at Kraken. Thank you.
There we go. All right. So thanks a lot. Next up is James Busher from Dive. So Dive is the third in our underwater robotics companies that's going to be talking, and we'll kind of switch over to air. So we're going to vary it a bit, but we'll let James go up next.
Thanks, Tom, and good afternoon, everyone. As I mentioned, I'm James Busher. I'm with Dive Technologies. We'll continue the theme here of maritime and subsea. Dive Technologies is a small company that was founded in 2018. We're located down in Quincy, just south of the Boston area. And I'm sorry I can't be with you today, but the team is comprised of some very experienced engineers with backgrounds in kind of the ocean robotics space. And I'm happy to give you a quick overview of what we've been working on and where we're headed. Next slide, please. So Dive Technologies is focused on the development of autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs. And really what we're intending to bring to the space is a disruptive capability in terms of both price point as well as mission capability for autonomous underwater vehicles relative to what's in the marketplace today. The first product that we are focused on developing for the commercial market is what would be considered a large displacement UUV, and that's what you see here on the slide. That large displacement UUV is roughly 10,000 pounds of displacement or a little more. It's about 20 feet long, and as you can see, it's about 4 feet in diameter. What we're able to do by focusing on a large displacement UUV is really challenge the paradigm within the autonomous underwater vehicle space, which traditionally has been focused on systems that are on the smaller end of the scale, and that is to say up to about 21 inches in diameter, which is kind of a magic number for the US Navy for a number of reasons. But what we're hoping to do with this large displacement vehicle is really enter the market with a cost basis that is comparable to some of those smaller UUVs, but with a mission capability that is an order of magnitude greater. And what I mean there is we'll have the capability with the vehicle to support missions that are days in length, whereas typically you're measuring mission lengths in the smaller size UVs or AUVs in sort of the hours and ones of twos of days. And we have a platform that's intended leveraging some technologies like you just heard about from Jeff for things like novel energy storage that allow us to perform missions up to 8 days or even longer and transit up to even 1,000 kilometers, depending on how we configure the mission. The types of missions we're focused on with the platform are what you can see listed here, and they cover both the commercial as well as sort of a more defense side of the house. On the commercial side, everything you can think of in terms of subsea survey is what we're trying to provide access to. And the analogs on the defense side of the house include things like intelligence preparation of the operational environment and ISR applications, down through anti-submarine warfare, which you heard Alex talk a little about, some novel approaches there, and on to things like even delivering payloads in the future. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what it is we're working on. If we jump to the next slide. So again, as I mentioned, what we're really hoping to do with the initial offering here, which we call the Dive LD, is to disrupt the sort of standard price point associated with customers who are trying to access their missions with autonomous underwater vehicles and provide them with an endurance and a capability for data collection that really far exceeds what's been typical. The other novel thing that we've been able to do with our development of the Dive LD platform is generate a base architecture which is highly scalable and flexible. And so while we've been focused initially on the Dive LD, which is our large displacement initial product offering, we have an architecture which can actually quickly, and by quickly I mean on the order of weeks to maybe a month, be scaled to cover other sizes of vehicle. So let's say, for example, you don't need the full capability of the Dive LD, but you're interested in a low price point AUV. That's something that we can spin very quickly based on the architecture that we've developed for the core platform. And next slide. If you want to play the video, Joyce, this will just give you a quick look at what we've been up to lately. So again, the company was founded in 2018. And we have just in the last couple of months put the vehicle in the water for the very first time. And so we're actively working through initial shakedown testing with the first system we call hull number 1 right now, as we start to focus on building follow-on systems, including one which we'll be working with the Kraken team to build. And so stay tuned as we advance quickly here after getting that vehicle in the water. And last slide quickly, just to give you an idea of some of the work that we have been doing already with government and defense customers. We have a couple of programs going right now with DARPA under several different primes. We've been executing on those for the last year or so. We have a collaborative research and development agreement with the Naval Undersea Warfare Center down in Newport, Rhode Island. And so we've got some connections and inroads with NUIC there. As well as we have a customer within the intelligence community who we successfully did some initial development and test work for in the August timeframe, and we're looking forward to continuing that. We have another proprietary customer that we've been supporting through a large defense prime. And I'll say at the end here, we're continuing to focus and are very eager to focus on additional opportunities within the defense and government space. For example, we're working on a team right now which will be proposing once the eventual RFP hits the street for the Navy's forthcoming large displacement UUV program, what they call Snakehead Phase 2. So I'll pause there, hopefully give you a quick overview of what we're up to at Dive Technologies, and would be more than happy to take any follow-on questions.
There we go. Thank you very much, James. Great to hear about Dive and the updates. Always a pleasure to learn and see you guys make great progress. Next up is Rick Whitaker from AirShare. Rick.
Great, thanks Tom, and thanks Joyce for having us here, and amazing presentations this afternoon from both the government sponsors and from startups. So very exciting to see. My name is Rick Whitaker. I'm the CEO of AirShare. For anyone that faces threats from small drones, AirShare creates the world's friendliest guided missile to safely and cost effectively deal with those threats. And we'll go to the next slide. And the words friendly guided missile and safely and cost effectively typically don't go together, and that's my whole point to this company and to the mission that we're on, is really to reverse the asymmetric advantage, the overmatch advantage that our enemies currently have when they're deploying drones for malicious use. And so what we're aiming to do is reverse that cost advantage by creating a response to it that safely and cost effectively removes those threats before they can get to their target. And we see this issue occurring in both the civilian and the defense markets, where there's this need for not just low cost, but low collateral effect solutions. So our response, next slide, is to create a 3D printed, lightweight, hobby rocket-like missile, which can fly very, very fast, but does not cause and create collateral effects. In this particular one you see here, it has ranges up to 10,000 feet. It travels Mach 0.7, so you're probably scratching your head, how the heck can this possibly be friendly and create low collateral effects? Wait 2 more slides and we'll get to that. Before I do that, the next slide is just demonstrating some of its ease of deployment and lightweight. It's man-portable, can be deployed everything from dismounted, fixed to mobile. You can mount it on a drone, you can mount it on a vehicle, you can put it on the move. On the left side there we spent the month at Eglin Air Force Base during Napoleon 2020, showing the precision guided missile taking down drones, as well as fire for effect, where multiple shots basically to negate an entire sector. On the right is work that we did with the Army's asymmetric warfare group during a night operation. Next slide. So this is what I'm talking about when I say friendly. The payload inside, well, you can make it unfriendly. It'll take any 40mm ordnance. The particular payload that we carry for counter-drone missions is effectively AirShare's patented latex spaghetti, which is a propeller fouling mechanism, creates a cloud of about 60 foot in diameter, which has high persistence. It basically floats there. Any drone that comes in, whether it's fixed wing or rotary wing in the case you see there, will become ensnared in those latex spaghetti. And in the civilian version, everything's tethered to a parachute. It comes down at 3 feet per second. And in the military version, it has no parachute. It just drops immediately. Next slide. We are working on various other different deployment modes for the dismounted soldier, as well as we've just completed our 4th milestone in an optical seeking project, again, which takes commercially available motors, commercially available cameras, commercially available artificial intelligence engines, puts in our proprietary flight control and our proprietary modeling to create an hand launchable optical seeking missile. And you'll be seeing some of that in a video in a few slides as well. Next slide. It's easily integrated. We've already integrated with Cursor on Target. We've integrated with Medusa and demonstrated those working with Department of Defense operating systems, command and control systems. It also operates completely autonomously if needed to. Basically a radar, a tablet, and a missile is all that you need. And if you don't have the radar, all that you need is the missile, the tablet, but an optical seeker on the missile. Next slide. Our Block 0B, which is our version 2, includes extended range as well as multiple missions that you can carry out with a single platform. So whether it's counter drone that we're taking on here as a primary mission, or target acquisition and ISR, it's able to do both of those, and in a variety of different flight modes, and you can see them there. Go to our website or follow up with me if you want more details on those. But I think the more relevant part is the next slide, which has a video kind of showing it work. Awesome, great, thank you. So as you can see there, for a few $100s, you're able to get quite a bit of capability based on commercial off the shelf, no ITAR restricted items used in any of those to engage small drones safely and cost effectively. And with that, I'll turn it back to Tom. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Next up is Cleo and Omar. There he is. He's around the pillar. I know he was here locally, so let me do.
Good afternoon. I'd like to start by thanking MassRobotics for putting together this great event. My name is Omar El-Ryan. I'm the founder and CEO of Clear Robotics. Next slide, please. In the future, I can say with very high degrees of confidence, the American Army is probably going to be fighting in urban areas. We're not organized like that right now. General Milley, Chief of Staff of the Army. Next slide, please. Just go a couple more times. One more, please. Thank you. Clearing caves, buildings, and tunnels are some of the most dangerous and challenging missions in close quarter combat. And existing robots are not useful in helping to mitigate those risks because they're not well suited to operate in confined spaces and GPS-denied environments. Ground robots can't climb stairs or traverse difficult terrain, and quadcopters are too large to safely operate in narrow areas. Next slide, please. That's why we've developed the DroneNut, which is the world's first small UAS that's designed and engineered to operate safely in confined spaces and GPS-denied environments. The DroneNut is a ducted fan UAV with two counter-rotating propellers instead of a duct that's surrounded by a body that houses all the batteries and the electronics. The DroneNut is the first of its kind. It's safe, it's compact, it's intelligent, and it's efficient. The DroneNut is the first ducted fan UAV that actually works. Next slide, please. Ducted fans are not a new technology. In fact, they date all the way back to the 1950s with many different attempts at making this technology work. But nobody has been successful at doing so because ducted fans are incredibly challenging to control. So while we did not invent ducted fans, what we've done is we've developed a way to make ducted fans work at a scale that's never even been attempted before. Next slide, please. We did that through our patented thrust vectoring technology where you see control surfaces working there. The idea is that these control surfaces redirect airflow to create a vector, a thrust vector, and that's exactly how that's how space rockets are controlled. Next slide, please. The DroneNut is currently at TRL-7. We've demonstrated it successfully numerous times, including at the Natick Soldier Systems Center. It currently flies for 15 minutes. Flight time will be around 20 minutes very soon, which is very impressive for a platform of this size. It'll also be much quieter, so a lot of improvements that we're making on the platform. And we're very excited to announce that we've recently conducted our first outdoor flight. So the DroneNut is not just a platform to operate indoors, but it's a very versatile platform. Actually, it's the only platform that can operate both outdoors and indoors. Next slide, please. So how do we compare to a quadcopter? DroneNut is more compact, more portable than a quadcopter. It's actually more efficient as well. It can fly twice as long as a quadcopter of the same size and carry a heavier payload. And it's much more resilient because it does not have any exposed propellers. That means it can bump into walls, for example, not crash or damage itself. And it's very, very safe. You can literally grab it out of the air without any risk of injury. Next slide, please. So a lot of people compare us to the Black Hornet. So how do we compare to the Black Hornet? Well, we can carry two Black Hornets as payload. And anyone who's familiar with the Black Hornet, they know that it has a big limitation because it has a very limited payload capacity. So the sensors that it carries, specifically the IR sensor, for example, it's a very low resolution IR sensor. The Black Hornet also doesn't have any autonomy because it cannot carry the computation power required, which is very critical when you're trying to operate in very confined spaces and GPS-denied environments, because no autonomy means a heavy cognitive payload on the operator. Next slide, please. We talked about ISR as an application, but there are other applications in the defense space, including fitting it with sensors to do radiation hazard detection and inspections of aircraft, for example, or missile silos. Next slide, please. Our goal for this platform, for this technology, is to become a highly intelligent and fully autonomous platform to work with the warfighter to help make his life easier, to help him accomplish his mission successfully in a very safe and efficient manner. What we don't want to do is get in the way of the warfighter doing his job. So what we want is to be able to take advantage of the experience and the intuition of the warfighter, but not burden him with the task, the mundane task of flying and operating a small UAS. And at the core of that is full autonomy. So we're working on a fully autonomous system that is capable to fly not just outdoors and in very well lit conditions, but in very low dark conditions or low light conditions and very feature poor environments, which are most indoors are. So we're working with some of the world's best researchers in that space, which will allow us to do things like 3D mapping and swarming. So it's a very exciting future for us, and we're very excited to bring this capability into the defense space. Next slide, please. We are a resident here at MassRobotics. We're also a graduate of the Air Force Accelerator powered by Techstars. Mass Challenge is another good accelerator down the street, working with a lot of, or a few law enforcement agencies, SOCOM, and companies like BAE Systems and others. Next slide, please. I think that's all for me. We'll be doing a quick demo after, so I'd love for all of you to join, and if you have any questions, I'd love to answer those. Again, my name is Omar Al-Ryan, CEO at Clear Robotics. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. For those of you who are remote and won't be able to see a demo, they were just on Channel 4 in Boston. Their news ran a little special on it. And it had the dronettes flying around here, so we encourage you to go and look that up and see it. It's a lot of fun to see flying. Next up is Jeff from Target Arm, and we have Target Arm here as well.
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for coming out today. Thanks to MassRobotics, a great partner for ours, and everyone else who's actually showing here today. So I'm Jeff McChesney. I'm the CEO and founder of Target Arm. Ryan Bigham is our VP and lead engineer over there. He's going to be showing Tular here in just a moment, which is our product. As you can see, we're also a Air Force Accelerator powered by Techstars graduate, as well as some others that will be talking to you today. Next slide, please. I'll go through this really fast because the big thing is on the other side that you want to see. So imagine a world where you can have the ability to order a package and have it delivered to your home in about 6, 7, 8 minutes. For something that you wanted, or at the same time using the exact same device where you'd have the ability in this case to be able to not have to get out and set up a drone, to launch a drone, and then have it come back in a wartime environment because you might get shot during that process. We use the exact same solution, which is called Tular, just to my left-hand side there. Next slide, please. I'm gonna go really fast. We do this with a device that we have sitting right here, which allows you to launch and recover both rotary and fixed-wing drones from any moving vehicle, and you can do it autonomously. We can even do it during windy conditions. So you can see here that we're using rotary wing and fixed wing for the capabilities. Next slide, please. This is a short little video showing you the from a static position of capturing the drone and then releasing the drone using 2 sets of pins on each side. Here we are moving with our truck, which is outside, where the pins are actually holding the drone in place, the air is passing through, and it just flies away, labeling extremely high cycle rates by going back inside and capturing it as it comes back in. We're already operating at over 65 miles per hour, so basically any combat speeds other than going on the airborne side. And we've designed this for initially for the ground operations, but it's also designed for underwater, and it's also designed for in space. So it's a multi-domain capability, but we're doing it in the ground first. Next slide, please. Like I said, we're dual use. Package delivery is the largest commercial market, which is in the top left corner. That our package delivery truck is where we started. We brought that up to about TRL6, which is the device right here, which is Tular to my left-hand side. And we are currently building our TRL8 for the Air Force for an SBIR contract that is going to be significantly bigger. I'll show you in just a second. But we want to put it on the Striker. The Maneuver Center of Excellence down at Fort Benning wants that. We've got a pandemic response for the Massachusetts National Guard. They want to work with that. We put on ATVs, first responders, maritime environment, and obviously onto a combatant like an M1 tank. You'd be able to bolt this on. This thing is maneuverable. You can take it off, you can put it on, you can put it on the back of things, you put it on a Humvee, put it on the back of a tank, you can move wherever you want. We're going to take it out of here, put it back in the truck today, and you'll see it on your way out. Our truck is out there, will be operating. You can see it actually operate on the truck when you leave. Next slide, please. Okay, a couple things. We're working on our next piece, which I talked about for the Air Force, which is TULAR version 3. This is 2.5 sitting right here. You can see the size differential that's down in the bottom, which is the one that's showing right here is 2 feet by 2 feet. And then the one we're building next, which we're about a month away from that one being completed from assembly, is 5 feet wide, 4 feet high, and 4 feet deep. It'll take Raven and capture Raven on a fixed wing capability versus having to stop, pick it up out of the dirt. So with that, then I'm going to turn it over to Ryan. He's going to show you a couple of things real quickly, and we'll get off the stage.
But basically, when you do a launch, it would reach out, props would spin up, it would get to a hover speed, you can fly away. It's in clean air now, it doesn't know it's in between these two breaches, and fly naturally. For recovery, you do the exact same thing, but in reverse. So the drone would come in, it would key in on the breach, center itself in the breach, there's the sensors in the breach that know it's in the correct place. The pins would then close around it. It's still flying at this point, it doesn't know any different. And then we brought back down into the truck. Once it's in the truck for military, it can recharge, rearm, payload, whatever you might need to do. For package delivery, put a new package on it, send it back off. Again, launch sequence, flies away right now, coming back, goes into the breach, it's recovered, brought back down in. Really simple, but works very, very well.
It's very simple and elegant. I designed this for extremely high cycle rates. I actually designed it as a gun, but a gun that actually takes the bullet back, which is very atypical from other people I've seen before. So along the way, we've got our new drone that's built by Greenside Ag, which is upstairs and affiliated with MassRobotics as well. That's the size of drone that's going to go in the new one, with plenty of room to spare. Just to give you an idea of the size differential that's going to be there. If you want to come up and feel that we've got the graphite over on the side there about how light it is, extremely capable. That's what we're going to be running with the Air Force test here in the next couple of months along the way. So mobile, capable of being used on virtually any vehicle. You can drop it on an ATV from C-130 and race on around with you in a soft type environment as well. Many, many use cases on the military side, and we're trying to expand our use cases right now. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff and Ryan. So one of the things you might be interested in is, well, how am I going to fly that in, right? That's got to be hard for me to kind of fly in. Well, luckily we have another company who can talk about that. And so next up is Matt from Autonodyne.
Hi, I'm Matt Paddock from Autonodyne. I'm a flight test and systems engineer since about mid-2018. Next slide, please. So I just want to give a quick background of who we are. We were born out of an aviation company. Autonodyne Corporation is our sister company. They've been around since 1994, building avionics for general aviation aircraft. We took that idea, we took their software, and we took $150 million in terms of intellectual property from them, and we're able to repurpose that for UAS. So our focus is to enable highly automated or optionally automated flight, particularly within the national airspace, but also between vehicles in a collaborative environment. While we started in aviation, that doesn't mean we're only an aviation company. Right now, we also support rovers. You can control multiple rovers, multiple fixed wing, multiple copters all at the same time. We are slowly but surely moving into the maritime environment as well. We're trying to figure out which vehicles are open to support right now. But everything we do is a software-centric solution. So ideally, we don't want a customer to ever have to hook up our hardware to their vehicle. Sometimes you have to, it's a necessity. But whenever we can, we design our software so that it requires no hardware interface other than what's pre-existing on the drone. Currently, we did start in MassRobotics. We moved out about a year ago. We are now 10 minutes down the street, 10-minute walk. That's still in Boston Seaport. We have about roughly 30 plus engineering staff within that office. We also have various other offices throughout the US, including Concord, Massachusetts, Burlington, Massachusetts, Ohio, California, and we have a few guys at the US Air Force Academy in Colorado. Next slide, please. So just to give you a very quick product overview of what we offer. Very first thing, very broad, called Autonodyne AI. This is AI that we developed with our dedicated AI and algorithms team. All of that AI is rolled back into our other product categories. So this is artificial intelligence and algorithms that are developed to either go on a ground control interface or to go onto the drone or to be run in a server in the background. We have about 24 behaviors right now that are multi-vehicle, that are either work in progress or completed. We have about another 24 that are on the to-do list. We're currently under contract for about 8 of those with AFSOC, Naval Special Warfare, and a few other factors. The second product category is the most visual one, is Autonodyne control stations. We call these the RC1000. It's a family of systems that allows for streamlined multi-vehicle support. So you have the ability to use a very clean, simple, streamlined interface to control dissimilar multiple vehicles. Right now, we have 3 of those variants. We have RC1000A, which is our Android-based variants. They are very automated for the special operations troop on the ground. He needs to be focused on his objective. He needs to be focused on his weapon. He cannot be looking at a screen micromanaging a drone. The current systems, say a DJI, which I know we shouldn't talk about anymore, but those current systems, they are good drones, but they're not very automated. You have to tell it where you want to fly. You either have to place a waypoint or you have to manually fly it. But you can do both of those things with the RC1000. You can also provide it tasks. You can say, observe this, inspect this. I want you to set up a perimeter. I want you to escort any convoy that comes into your area. You can do all of those features and more within the RC1000. We have a couple other variants, the tablet-based variants, which are more for an on-scene commander. And we also have the W version, which is the widescreen version meant for the guy who's sitting in a tactical operations center, sitting in air traffic control tower. They can manage many different vehicles all at the same time, either from a supervisory role, or they can directly take over that vehicle and tell it where they want to go. So you have unmanned systems that are coming in for landing. The tower controller can take over that vehicle, say, I don't want you to land right now, task it with a new waypoint and send it off. The third product category, and this is where our sister company Avidyne comes in, is Autonodyne mission computers. Avidyne provided us all of their source code. So what we've done is we've changed that source code to make everything accessible. You can access autopilots, nav systems, radio systems, all through their instrument flight displays. So you can see they have 3 series of instrument flight displays here, displayed on the bottom of the screen. If you have any of those 3 IFDs in your aircraft, we can come with a USB stick and load a new version of our software and completely autonomously control that aircraft. We can talk through that radio. We can route you to new waypoints. We can take direct physical control with a joystick over that aircraft. And if you don't, if you can't support something as big as an IFD, you can take something like the North Atlantic series hardware, which is in the bottom right of your screen there. That is essentially the same thing made by a separate company. We've made our software compatible with their hardware. And you can see that there's a pen on top of there. That's for reference of the size. So that's only about 6 inches long. Next slide, please. So one of the biggest problems for anyone controlling UAS is when you get it into swarming. Controlling a single vehicle is very easy. Modest swarming is still overwhelming. Say you want 5 vehicles or 10 vehicles. That's something that should be easy to do, but really isn't. There's a couple of ground control stations out there that are meant to control dissimilar vehicles. They're not very good. If you take your eyes off a single vehicle, if you look at a single vehicle, chances are one of the other vehicles is going to crash while you're doing that. If not, all of them are going to crash. We've had that happen while trialing competitors' ground control stations. We routinely control about 7 to 9 dissimilar unmanned systems simultaneously by a single operator. Over 1,200 flights have been done with this software in 2020. Can add about 17 to that because I did 17 this morning right before this conference. Just for a bit of proof, at the bottom left, that was with the Naval Special Warfare Development Group in November 2019, I believe, down in Virginia. You can see we have 2 quadcopters, a hexcopter, a rover, and a plane all within the same screen. All of that was controlled via one RC1000 Android tablet. In the bottom right was at GIFX 20-1. That was in October 2019 at Camp Roberts, California. We controlled, I believe, 2 hexes, a quadcopter, and a plane, all inspecting that series of, I guess, shipping containers down there. Then the top is the UTAP-22 unmanned fighters on the left and right, and that's the Harrier in the middle. Those UTAP-22s are made by our partner company Kratos. We are the safety pilot and pilot interface for those unmanned fighters. They're meant to fly in conjunction with a manned fighter like an F-16 or Harrier. We've been flying that and continue to fly that since 2017. They're working on their new airframe right now. We'll be controlling that as well. Next slide, please. The RC-1000, to just give a little bit more detail on it, we support full multi-vehicle control, so everything's streamlined, very simple, dissimilar vehicles, and you don't require much operator oversight. Everything is modular and hardware agnostic. We use modular software where you can write a software wrapper or translator to translate what the base protocol is, which is generally STANAG 4586, which is the NATO standard for unmanned systems control. We can write a translator from that to translate to almost any vehicle. If we can send packets to those vehicles over a wireless interface, doesn't matter which interface, as long as we can do that, we can write a translator. Usually we have companies who see this as a benefit to them and we can get the protocol from them and they'll provide it to us. In other instances, say SOCOM wants to get a specific vehicle, the manufacturer isn't friendly, we can reverse engineer that pretty easily and still figure out a way to translate to that vehicle and control it. We have ATAC integration on our Android products, we have WinTAC coming on our Windows products, and everything rolls in AI. So we can either run AI from the control system, or we can run AI on the drone if the drone operator's willing. Next slide, please. This common operating picture, just to say, all of our different products are all hooked together. They all share the same data. They're all compatible with each other. So you don't need to worry about which one you're using. They all have similar functions. Next slide, please. And the last thing I want to talk about is our computer vision. So we use computer vision in a few different ways. Detect and avoidance. We have an optionally piloted Cessna 182 that is hooked up with all of our software. We have a partner detect and avoid company running their software. In that top right, you can see we're flying 2 planes at each other. That was a very fun test to do, but they can detect and immediately react to that aircraft. On the bottom right is a precision delivery we did with our partner company Valkyrie, where we're landing on their autonomous mailbox within 2 centimeters of precision. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the very last thing. Autonomous drone delivery. This is where we're also getting a lot of traction right now. We're doing autonomous drone delivery both with our partner company Valkyrie, which you can see in the top right there, developing flight algorithms to figure out a safe and efficient way to fly into that mailbox. We did that on September 11th, 2019, in front of the Lieutenant Governor of Georgia. We did that delivery flight. That was very early in the technology. Now we did a military tactical resupply where we delivered a 50-pound jerry can of water over a 5-kilometer radius in Yuma Proving Ground in Arizona, and that was back in January 2020. We are currently developing this with the Navy to support roughly between a 50 to 500-pound payload. It really depends on the vehicle. We're vehicle agnostic, so as soon as they source us the vehicle, we say, okay, well, we can do this delivery mission. Right now, the focus is networking multiple delivery vehicles together so that you can have 5 to 10 to 50 vehicles all delivering to different locations or the same location while deconflicting. The bottom right is a picture of one of our algorithms. This is a very simple algorithm for us, but it's our flight planning algorithm. You can see all of those red and blue circles are moving targets or moving obstacles. All the black are static obstacles. The yellow veins that you're seeing are paths that the vehicle or the ground control station is computing in real time to figure out which is the best one to go with. And that very thin red line, I don't know if you guys can see it, but the very thin red line that goes all the way through it is the one that the vehicle has currently selected for use. Next slide. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me. We are located right down the street. We're happy to integrate to third-party vehicles. We'll say one of the ways we found a lot of traction is we're very friendly to integration. We're very friendly to other companies. The company before us, Target Arm, we're working with them for the vision system. Company after us, Tyson, we've worked with them to control multiple different drones with their system as well. And I know that's not the only companies through MassRobotics that we've worked with. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. So next up is Dexter with Python.
Thank you all for being here. I'm very grateful to be participating with MassRobotics. Joyce, Tom, many others, Matt, Ron, Marissa, Russ have been very instrumental to Pison's growth and led our company, which was primarily focused on consumer, to be able to determine that public sector is actually the main market we're focused on for near term and growing a sustainable business. Very grateful for those partnerships. So my name is Dexter Young. I'm CEO of Pison, where we make wearable sensors designed to capture neuromuscular signals on the surface of the skin, which we then combine with proprietary machine learning algorithms to enable intuitive, productive, hands-free control of military, commercial, and consumer electronics. In other words, gesture control as well as nerve insights. Next slide. There is a national defense mission need in the area of human-machine interfaces for multi-domain operations. Soldiers need situational awareness solutions that are quick, intuitive, and effective, and can be used during any phase of an operation, both during night and day, and without interfering with the use of weapons and tools. We have engagements with multiple customer groups listed here across many different agencies, and we are already on the path on contract to be integrated with 2 programs of record with ATAC involving Air Force. Next slide. Our technology addresses requirements for HMI, human-machine interfaces, by enabling a finger lift to access the digital world. Pison invented and patented the process for electroneurography to detect nerve signals on the top of the wrist. We have 4 patents and 18 pending. Our technology includes a proprietary sensor the size of an Apple Watch and machine learning algorithms to capture millimeter scale finger and wrist movements and convert them to inputs for digital systems. The Gambit device, which is the name of our hardware for government use, enables a library of what we call gesture primitives, such as air swipes and taps. These are then carried forward into our SDK to any application on Android phone or Windows or augmented reality headset. Next slide. As our early prototypes evolved, we quickly realized that the data we are holding and capturing has value not only for gesture-based interfaces, but for a range of applications. This video shows an internal data visualization tool that displays in real time the various sensor feeds being captured by the Gambit device. The primary electronography ENG field is shown in the top graph, with IMU, gyroscope, accelerometer data related being shown in the lower graphs. At the top, you can see our real-time machine learning classification engine highlights the different gestures and states that are detected as the hand in the video performs the actions. You'll also notice in this video that the signal can be captured even when the range of motion is restricted. So even when the finger cannot freely extend, the intent to extend it is still acquired as it passes through the wrist. Likewise, unintentional movements and flexion are not detected when the intent is sent to the hand. In the video, as the index finger previously was shown being lifted by the other hand, no signals actually detected because the brain actually wasn't sending the signal to the finger. So we're capturing the effort of a person trying to move a part of their body, not the actual movement itself. We can go to the next slide. For example, this is a video we showed, first of all, relating to a government project that we performed for a customer in Florida. This is a commercial version of the use cases here. These technologies actually were prototyped and demoed live, controlling a end user device as a mouse cursor, launching drones off of a Boston Dynamics dog. This is actually stuff that we're planning to show in Boston currently. Right now, the customers in North Carolina as well as Florida have been showing interest for this. We're developing a gesture control platform for mixed air and ground. With this, we have an official partnership with Boston Dynamics, as well as an official partnership with Samsung for their end user devices to explore how feasibility of small unit and single operator concurrent control of multiple unmanned platforms and human factors considerations can be used to maintain awareness of those assets within a swarm while a person is engaged in combat. Current solutions, as we all know, for dismounted operators are limited to physical controllers and touchscreens as the only mechanisms to interact with them and consume information. By providing small unit operators with the ability to use gesture to launch or take control of deployed assets on demand and to allow for predefined tactics without compromising heads-up situational awareness, Pison is creating the architecture for deeply integrated warfighter swarm teaming. Next slide. Our work with augmented reality UIs, which could be construed for anything on the head with a UI in this situation, augmentation for visual day or night, can be controlled using simple wrist and finger movements. Here is a sample of a UI that's actually deployed in the world, but this is an Android emulation of it to showcase a sample how a person can easily, even wearing gloves, be able to manipulate UI elements. The next slide. So our team, we're 35 and growing, probably 50 people or 45 to 50 people by the end of this year. We're multi-dimensional skills that are very experienced. Myself, I'm the CEO. We also have team members from defense primes as well as commercial, including Uber, Formlabs. And we also have investors, including Bose and In-Q-Tel. Steve is actually our portfolio manager as well for that. And we have today demonstrations for ATAC as well as Skydio drone. And we'll have future demonstrations that are available at this location for phone as well as ground robots.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Dexter. All right, next up is Brian Hart from Black Eye Robotics.
First slide. So I'm Brian Hart from Black Eye Robotics. My contact information is here. Next slide. So we've been around about 14 years, specializing in defense and research on ground robots and arms. We'll talk today just about 2 items, but the 4 items on the stove right now are automated COVID-19 disinfection robots, fully autonomous logistics for pick and palletizing heavy objects, autonomous perimeter, persistent perimeter surveillance, and detachable trailers with autonomous robots for outdoor logistics. Next slide. So over the years, these have been our clients. You probably recognize most of them. Army Corps of Engineers and DARPA projects sponsored by AFRL have been our most recent work. Next step. Hit the video on the upper left. So last year, we built a fully autonomous arm that can be detached and placed on mobile robots independently. This one has a vertical reach of almost 12 feet and a horizontal reach of about 8 and had a lift capacity of about 100 pounds. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk primarily about 2 items, automated coronavirus disinfection. We've created a separate subsidiary called Black Eye Environmental. We'll be public with that next Tuesday. And our focus is on protecting people from the coronavirus with a 21st century solution. Next slide. So we're bringing out 2 products. One is an autonomous robotic ultraviolet C system that will be used for public areas, schools, hospitals. We have a beta test site established in Rochester, New York, and 10 million square feet available to us. We've partnered with a commercial cleaning company that's extraordinary in their field, and we'll be working out the local protocols for this next month. Next slide. So here's one that's in shipment to us now. It uses the UVC system, fully autonomous. Pause. Next slide, please. We're also bringing out a second device, an autonomous hydrogen peroxide robot that will use dry misting. We actually have 2 sources for that. The shipments are en route to us now. It's designed to disinfect with hydrogen peroxide interior spaces, again, fully autonomous. Next slide. Video, please. So this is what's coming over, and we'll be bringing it over to MassRobotics to shake it out and then sending it up to Rochester. Next slide. So we think you need 21st century solutions to a 21st century pandemic. Would recommend you focus on places where people are concentrated. We believe it's going to be a persistent problem that lasting at least 3 years, and we have the beta site setting up the protocols now. We have additional chemical solutions coming that will give you a range of options. from the same platform. I would suggest you have money set aside in the CARE Act for COVID-related disinfections. A whole lot of it, in fact, is getting diverted now. You have 154 schools controlled by Department of Defense, major source of COVID infection that should be protected. 2 of them are right over at Hanscom, which we could test at, which would be right down the street from our location. And I would suggest that we could disinfect with hydrogen peroxide and UVC all of your 154 schools within starting January 2021. We'll have to bring in the products as imports, but we'll also be replacing the software with our own components for additional security. Next slide. So our other area is automated pick and pallet of large objects. We're taking the arm that we developed previously. It is now on version 9, and we're converting that to picking and placing large objects. Most robotics are designed to give the Army teeth. We're suggesting it's easier now to shorten the tail. And next year, I believe it will be possible for you to take an aircraft hangar, bring in supplies on pallets up to 100 pounds per object, and we should be able, with our industrial partners, to pick and place those items and place them on a shrink wrap pallet and sent to platoons as mixed item pallets. A very real possibility now. Next slide. So this is what we're working on right now. We should have the prototype for the version 9 here available for viewing this winter, and we will be releasing it in the first quarter of 2021. We'll be announcing it hopefully at the ProMat show. You can see our focus is on larger items. Next slide. The most difficult part for us has been to resolve the AI vision, but we found a licensing source that has now made that completely viable. You can see there are very slight differences in the boxes seen here visibly, and in the lower and the far right, you can see we have identical boxes sitting next to each other, and we're able to identify each of them separately. So now that we've accomplished that, we should be able to pick by vision the objects on a pallet packed with objects exactly alike. Next slide. This is what we intend to work on. You can see we have 2 vendors working with us on the lower platform. We'll provide the top as a applique attachment. We'll put pallets directly on the larger robots. These robots have capacity of about 2,000 pounds. Next slide. You can see another variation will be using a larger robot for picking and then using smaller robots for porting smaller loads that would provide a very economical overall solution. Next slide. Using the same exact device, we're going to put it on a vertical lift, autonomous forklift, and be able to reach in vertical ranges. This should increase product density tremendously, but essentially it's the same product repackaged for a different application. Next slide. So we think you should shorten the tail. We think that we can do accurate, always-on accurate mixed palletization at the platoon level, send it to automated shrink wrappers that will send it directly out on the truck. We think that this is possible next year, and we think it could be run 24/7. We would very much welcome a chance to develop this further with the military, but in the meantime, we're going for the larger commercial markets. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Next up, we have MVP and Quinn chatting about the wonderful thing that's sitting right next to them.
You miss the handshakes and hugs these days. Tough times. He's a good-looking guy, though. I like him. My name is Joe McLaughlin. I'm CEO of MVP Robotics. With me, I have Quinn Connell, CTO and head of engineering, and Ryan McManus, who runs marketing for us. We're actually now headquartered in Bradford, Vermont, where our engineering team is. We had an office in Lincoln, right at the Hanscom base, and just decided to close it because of COVID and other things. So we're actually going to be moving in here and taking advantage of it. So thanks to Joyce and the whole team for providing that for us. We're really looking forward to it. Next slide. You can skip the agenda and go to the, so we'll give you a little background on where we came from first, and then kind of what we're doing now. So we started in sports. We started in football. So we were founded at Dartmouth College in 2010. The head coach, Buddy Stevens, who had a team that was 0-10, was having a major problem, and that he wasn't getting his players to game day. They were getting hurt before game day. He didn't have a lot of depth. So he needed to find a way to create real-time situations and practice in games without getting his guys hurt. So he went to the engineering school, their engineering school, and asked a friend to do a project for them, and came up with a project to design a robotic tackling dummy that you could use in practice. So since that, we've heard a lot about CTE and all the injuries around football, especially now. If you watch the game this weekend, all the injuries that took place. This dummy was designed to start avoiding all of that contact, so you could do repetitions, teaching without getting hurt. It's basically a foam top with a robot in the bottom. So we incorporated in 2015, 2017, we shipped our first products. We had the NFL using it, about 190 colleges and about 130 high schools. So we've got a good base. At Dartmouth, we have a school called Tuck Business School. They offer some nice veteran programs, both for Tuck School and for re-entry into the real world for veterans. And as a result, we were able to get some feedback from people in the service to say, listen, if we don't have anything that moves like this, we still shoot and train on paper and steel, and it's static. If you can have something that moves like a human that we can train on and shoot, this would be a big deal for us. So we went back to the engineering team and said, oh, can we do this? So we came up with Hector, and I won't tell you what it stands for because you don't really care. But it's basically a souped up version of the football dummy. So it has more power underneath to obviously get through a rougher terrain than a football field. And it's got basically an armored base, bulletproof base, so that it can be used in live fire situations. We can go to the next slide. There's actually only one competitor in the market. It's called Marathon. It's made in Australia. And you have to lease 4 to 6 to 8 units for a year for $1 million. Our price point is less than $50,000. The whole idea behind this is it's a 360 degree bullet detection system. It's made of foam, so the bullet passes right through. It has sensors in the middle, so the sensor detects where the bullet passes through and reports to you back on a handheld. You can see a little picture of the application there on the handheld, whether it's a phone or an iPad. Tells you where you hit it. You hit it, and you're bunching, so you can use it in a training exercise. It also allows you to program it to go down after you hit it. So you can say, I want 1 headshot, 2 chest, 4 fringe, 1 pelvic, whatever it needs to hit to send it down, and then it'll pop back up for the next training. It's a long distance, so it can be used for close quarters combat as well as for sniper training. One of the great features of it is that it's expeditionary. So, kind of what you see is what you get. There's a little case that provides Wi-Fi or radio communications to talk from the sensors back to the handheld, but you basically set the case up. The top pops right off. You can roll it onto a truck, into a van, onto a plane, and wherever you're training your guys, you roll it right off, and within 5 minutes, you're set up and ready to rock and roll. You're not programming, you're not, scoping out terrain, you're not having engineers there with GPS systems. You're ready to rock and roll coming right off the plane, no matter where you are. I like to say that we have taken advantage of AFWERX. We were an SBIR 1 and SBIR 2 recipient. And I have to tell you that it's worked incredible for us. They were great partners. We just submitted our our plan. We gave them updates. They were in it all the way with us. It was a great partnering situation. So I give Captain Steve and his team a lot of credit for what they've done. We wouldn't be here today without that support. So I highly encourage any of you that are looking at that to go forward. We also have done a bunch of work with special operations. We've been at 3 ISOP days out at the SHOT Show in Nevada. In addition to our guys at Dartmouth, the veterans at Dartmouth, that's where we received some of our best feedback, because it's out on this big range getting shot up. And believe it when I tell you that over 3 years, we've made a lot of changes to make this thing work. In addition to the foam top, we also provide steel. So if you have newbie shooting or you don't want to get into the shot detection, you just want to get off some practice rounds, we have a steel that you can shoot. It's about half the size, but it gives you a strong target. We also have a non-lethal round detection unit that we've just developed. So it accepts munitions and paintball. So where that's good is in shoot houses. We've actually been involved in some training where if you're going into clear a room or you have a hostage situation, some of our guys have gotten hurt recently in those types of situations because they're not trained on somebody being in the back of the room shooting back. So we're able to mount a paintball system on this robot so that it's something that can skirt like a human being and turn and return fire as they're going through a breached door or as they're trying to clear a room. So as you can imagine, it's not a bullet, but it's paintball. It still stings, and it's a great learning experience. So this is something that we've developed in unison with some of the special ops teams, where we think that's a great fit for the indoor training. We are being used in training operations right now in Virginia with some special ops teams. So that's obviously we will get our best feedback and where we're having our most success right now. You can, last point on the slide is we have signed with ADS, who's our distributor. We can sell direct based on the SIBR 1 and SIBR 2, or we can sell through ADS, whichever. You can show the video now, please, Joyce. Because we don't have any sound. So Todd is a SEAL of 30 years, a commander of the West Coast SEAL team. Also did some work in the Pentagon. He's been a consultant for us for 2 years and has been incredibly valuable. Those are SWAT guys, so they're not as successful as the special ops guys. He's a special ops guy. Right. So we're actually fortunate enough to receive our first contract this week. So we'll be selling our first units of this, which is always your biggest challenge as a new company or a company getting into a new business line. So we're really excited about that. We're going to have demonstrations of this. So anybody who wants to shoot this later on, you can pull it out. I don't think so. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right, next up is David Askey from, Ascend Robotics.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, good. First slide. So I'm David Askey, CEO of Ascend Robotics. Background out of MIT in AI and perception. And if you can go to the next slide, I'm going to talk to you about autonomous spray coating, which is maybe a little bit different than the action we've had just before, but maybe quite relevant to sustainment. We have particular interest from the Air Force. My past company, I bring a team of with extensive experience solving hard problems for NASA, DARPA, DoD. A couple other projects. We did all the arm control for DARPA Phoenix, a repair satellite that goes up that attaches to an existing aging satellite and able to swap out components. And did all of the control for the world's first autonomous oil rig. So 18 different robotic subsystems that need to operate autonomously, allow human maintenance on the floor of the bots, stay out of the way of people. That was acquired by Neighbors Petroleum out of Houston last year. We're going to talk about today is we have a new vertically focused area, Ascend Build, focused on the construction industry, doing autonomous painting. And next. So here's the bot painting. We painted the entryway and some of the parts of the of this space. You can see the red wall and the gray entry walls here as part of the build out for MassRobotics. The bot adapts to its space, navigates through a room, finds what its walls, it learns what it's supposed to paint, what it's not supposed to paint, asks an operator for cues as it's going through a space to learn. The base one, it's about 10 feet reach right now, but extensible to go up much higher. We have a job coming up in a couple of weeks, 60 feet high requirement for this. This slide is a few weeks old, says 2 to 3 times faster than a manual crew, but actually right now we're able to go overnight and do the work of a typical paint crew, what they do in a week. And you can go to the next one. So this is a job we were at in Central Mass a couple of weeks ago, doing a new apartment complex. This is showing the unpainted apartment. So, so the bot in the first couple of rooms, the bot goes through, it asks the operator, you know, like it sees a window or a corner or some new object, asks if it should paint it or shouldn't paint it, and then learns as it's going, gets better as it goes. Here, precision painting, we have 3mm accuracy throughout the room. So a lot of what traditionally you needed to do to mask off areas, you don't need for this bot. Precise control over the thickness of the coat. So for these applications, it's less critical. We can put on a coat that's we can do 2 coats thickness in a single pass because it's so consistent. You don't get runs or sags. The Air Force is particularly interested in that for doing maintenance for fighter aircraft, where there's a real issue now with sags or runs if you have manual painting. Also, you get the person out of the way of rather caustic substances. This is by the third room, the bot had learned a lot about what it's supposed to paint and not paint. I did that room in 18 minutes and then went on to the other units, and that's about the pace. It just keeps getting better as it goes through a space. Next slide. So just again, the 3mm precision modular. So 10-foot reach, which addresses most of the commercial spaces, but we're getting requests for warehouses and much bigger spaces. We're adding on extra reach for that. Modular, so we can put our manipulator on, say, on a scissor lift or bucket lift. So we do a retrofit, add autonomy to that, and so gives us quite high reach. Safe near people. I don't know if that showed up in the video, but in a typical scenario, we've got other construction workers doing their thing right near the bot, and the bot's looking out for them, staying out of the way, or has an idea of when it's safe to move. And next slide. 275 pounds for the whole thing, so 2 people can lift it up if you need to pull it upstairs or so. That's what's done on a lot of the jobs that we're on now, where elevators are not in yet. So 2 guys can pick the bot up, move it upstairs, and then let the bot run. And next slide. So it's not just latex. We can spray 2-component epoxies, so coatings that are required for protecting a surface and require very, very precise application. Also drywall mud, intumescent, so for fire coating protection, and with the same system. Essentially, the bot just needs to know what it's supposed to spray and not spray, and some rough parameters. And we swap in the spray subsystem for it to use. And I think that's, and then the last one for here. This is just photos of the entryway here, the red wall that we did with the bot, and also a general contractor's headquarters renovation. They had somewhat outdated green walls and wanted to give it a fresher look. As part of that, we went through this is single coat, going white over green, very consistent. And again, the single coat, the coverage of a typical 2-coat system, but we can dial in the exact thickness that's needed there. So where we're looking to get into is for DoD sustainment, for facilities, for vehicles like the fighter craft or cargo aircraft. Part of what's in the system is the AI to learn an environment. That includes being able to sense the shape of an object or surface and figure out how to paint it for completeness and consistency, and provide a detailed record to you of everything that's been painted. And it happens to operate much more quickly than people. So that was it. I'm glad to answer questions afterwards. Thank you.
Next up is Lincoln. Do I see Lincoln here? Oh, there he is. Sorry, Lincoln from Urbex is up next.
Hello, my name is Lincoln Cavallari. I'm the CEO of Robotics. We are high performance logistics systems. So on the left, you can see a traditional military warehouse. So items are picked and stored on racks. It's a very manual process, very labor intensive, decreases readiness. On the right, you see our system. So our systems are robotically picked and packed. It improves readiness, and it is very efficient. The system can be installed in a few weeks, and it can be installed on military bases and or existing logistics warehouses. Next slide. So this is the tower bot on the left. Our system's a 2-bot system. The tower bot retrieves a bin and puts it on a grid bot below. Each system it starts at 32 tower bots and 64 grid bots, and goes up from there. On the right, you can see this is an overhead view. You can see the layout of all the tower bots and the bins. It rotates and picks from 4 different bays and drops it to the grid bot below. You can go to the next slide. So this is the grid layout of the system. Our system can retrieve 25 items and pack those items in 64 seconds. So if you're in a military application, it may be ammunition, it may be food supplies, aid. So our system's all about retrieving items quickly and then getting them packed and out to where they need to be. So the next slide. So last fall we developed our version 1 prototype here at MassRobotics. This is an example of our shuttle bot and tower bot, so next slide. So version 2 of our system, you can see here the multiple robots in the scaffolding system. So one of the unique benefits of our system is that it can be assembled in a few weeks. So if you guys are have a installation that needs to be up and running, we can do that rather quickly. So next slide. So this is an example of the full system in operation. So You can see pallets go into the system on the left, and then they go to the pick stations closest to us. Our system is really about efficiency and reducing labor, something that is pretty in high demand throughout not only traditional logistics, but could be used in military logistics applications as well. So next slide. So this is our cube system. This is for more general large-scale distribution. So this system has around 900 robots working together to retrieve bins and pack multiple orders. Our system was designed and built for e-commerce solutions in general warehouse logistics operations, but as automation infiltrates multiple different areas, we feel that there is a unique military application for our storage and retrieval system. So with that, that's Urbix Logistics.
All right, so last but not least, I know we're running way over, but Spiral Technologies, Costa is going to talk about Spiral.
I have special responsibility to close this amazing panel. I guess we are last perhaps because our technology is not exactly about robots or enabling them, but about augmenting human capabilities and providing robotic vision to humans. My name is Costa Shishkin, I'm CEO of Spiral, and let's go into the presentation. So I start with why was the problem, and this is soft side of the problem. Very typical picture in any Air Force hangar or also civil airlines hangar, where you have a ton of paper. Needless to say that it takes so much time to first create all these reports, to fill in all these forms manually, then type this back to the computer. But even worse, that you cannot really analyze this information. Having it in paper form, all your AI and machine learning is useless. People are just losing the hope to do anything useful with a lot of data, which can be helpful for the operations. And goes please to the next one. And this is harder piece of the problem. So another crash happened 2 years ago, C-130, all people killed on board, and overall statistics is sad as well. It's still more than 100 people killed in the military crashes in the last 5 years. And it's even more in the civil world. Famous Alaska 261 flight crashed because of the jack screw failure. By the way, this is not just all crashes, but crashes due to maintenance issues detected. Next, please. The solution to this is an augmented reality system which does two things. First, it provides visual step-by-step instructions to enable people to know better what to do. And secondly, to provide automated quality assurance. With the sensors which are now available on these amazing headsets, you can capture work and you can stop technicians before the mistake is made by photogrammetry or by other means. You can capture the results of the aircraft repair and draw your conclusions and not allow a mistake to happen. Next. In brief, we are fairly new, so we also went through Techstars just this year in Boston in Air Force. We're down selected in the Base of the Future competition. Just today got final call from the contracting officer from Tyndall. So we will be working on for this technology, for deployment of this technology for the next 12 months. Very new to Cybers as well, quite early stages with that. And in the commercial market, we're working with GE, not on aviation side, but on the manufacturing. Amazing use cases you will see in the video. Effectively, the same idea of providing clear visual instructions can be helpful across the board for any frontline workers. Also started working with airlines, but COVID is not helping too much. But technology is dual use, apparently. Next. So how it works, few highlights. Automated quality assurance is really a thing which is demanded by nearly every customer. With this headset, hands-free, you can capture how work was performed, and it is either repair. The more complex, the more difficult it is to draw the conclusion. But if you're working on the manufacturing line,
with a standardized parts, you can, with pretty high fidelity, determine if things went wrong. Then obviously 3D instructions, they're so much more helpful than just reading paper or swiping the tablet. You can see things in 3D, and because we think in 3D, you can literally walk around the engine and see parts highlighted, those which you need specifically to focus on. Things can be positioned contextually. Obviously, it's hands-free, and it's amazing for training as well. Next. Please play this quick video. We're hardware agnostic. What you will see, this is HoloLens 1. We're already working on the second device, thanks to Dexter, who borrowed us extra unit. And the better glasses will become, the easier it will be. So having a checklist, all your discrepancy forms. We did a quick pilot for manufacturing use case, so you can have guided inspection. So these green dots, this is where you need to perform measurement. And you can have the result of it in the real time. This is overlay on the engine. You can see the parts highlighted which you need to work on, and you can retrieve the inspection results. For example, boroscope inspection, highly sophisticated visual thing, and you can have pictures right on your engine. Example of disassembly, training, or a procedure. Are we in danger already? Shall we stop? All right. I think this is a valid reason to put it on pause.
We will manage to go right. This is where that was right.
We're sorry to have to end the webinar, but fire alarm in the system. So thank you all for attending, and we'll be including the process and make sure that we send it out to all. Thanks so much.